know where you are. Yes, sir.
This is Appetite for Distortion.
Welcome to the podcast compilation. Volume 1 theme, West Arkeen. What you are going to hear is a series of all original interviews we have done here on Appetite for Distortion. 3, in fact, are going to hear from James Hunting, Gregg Buchwalter, both from West's band, The Outpatience, and KC, who is the nephew of the late West Arkeen. This compilation is posted as of February 2021, so let's travel back for our first interview to June 2018. And also joining this conversation is original LA Guns manager Raz Q. So let's hear Raz and James reflect on West Arkeen. Yeah! Hey, Jamie, what's going on?
Nothing much, man. I'm just sitting here with this Gretsch Duo Jet in my hand. It's not a bad guitar, man. It's hot out here today. It's hotter than hell, man. It's freaking baking.
So where are you calling from again, Jamie?
Pasadena. Van Halen 10.
Nice.
You got to get some Zanku chicken, man, and then...
Oh, man. Yeah. Yep.
It's that place.
My friend's making me something to eat right now.
I love
what
it.
What you guys been doing, Rand?
I just been, I wrote a couple books and went to college. I mean, since the last time I see you, a bunch of stuff, and then, like, nothing. Smoked a couple, like, truckfuls of pot. That's about it.
Right on.
And I'm not talking, like, pickup trucks either.
Uh-huh. Monster trucks, I'm sure.
What kind of guitar you got right there?
It's a Gretsch Duo Jet. It's
a hollow body?
No, actually, no. This is a solid body. I think it is. It's electromatic.
I like it. Jamie's like, not only are you our guest, but it's like you're our official house band for this episode as well.
There you go.
Right on, man. Don't take the spot. I'll take it.
No, I'm into it. And before we proceed, because Raz and I were talking about it on the intro, and I know I asked you briefly off the air, do you prefer Jamie or James? Because, of course, you're listed as James on the Outpatience record, but you're listed as Jamie on Facebook. That's how we were introduced. What do you Mr. Hunting, what do you prefer?
Or James, as they say in South America. James is fine, man. James is cool.
Okay, James.
Yes.
All right, you got it.
You can call me Jamie if they want, but it's, that was, it came from when I was a kid, and some people stuck with, but, my older compadres, they call me James,
All right, James it is.
Right, James.
So before, because I want to obviously, thank you for James for coming on the show. I know we've spoken a few times over the past few weeks, and you never know when you first are introduced to somebody, especially when it's over the phone, if it's going to be awkward, because it's the first time you're meeting somebody. You don't know what their cadence is, what their sense of humor is, but you. Sure. Have just been very open and honest and just very sincere. So I've just been looking forward to this for a while, because I feel like I've known you for a while at this point.
Right now, we spent a few minutes on the phone talking about our personal stuff, and we have some things in common, actually quite a few things. But I've been looking forward to it too, and there's so much stuff to talk about.
It is, and I wanted Raz to be on this episode because I know, you guys really know the history of GNR, and of course of West Arkeen. The anniversary of his passing was just a few days ago, so I guess it's
for lack of a better word, appropriate to speak with you now. But I guess before we get to that, and of course, Raz, whenever you have, do your Raz thing. Whenever you have follow-up questions, just, tell me to shut up and jump in. But I want
right now.
I knew you were going to do that, you son of a man. So, James, I want to know, where did you grow up? Are you from the West Coast? Are you from California? Where did young James come from?
Young James came from Pasadena, man. It was 117 degrees when I was born, and late September. And I spent a lot of my life here. Lived in Hawaii for a little bit, in Tokyo, Japan, but it's always been back here to Pasadena. Actually, Altadena is where I live, but I was born in Pasadena, Huntington Memorial, the hospital down here, and basically haven't strayed too far for too long. But there's lots of good places to live. It's just relocating is this has been where my musical roots and all the people I know have come from. Ed Cahall and Alcohol, the Van Halen brothers, live right down the street, and Dave Roth, all that, and I came up right behind those guys, but I did do the backyard party thing here.
Oh yeah,
where kind of Van Halen got started. Yeah, they just kind of bumped up the backyard party to a bigger venue, But there were some really, really big parties that used to happen around here, and I was on the tail end of that. There's a part of Pasadena that's probably has more money than Beverly. Matter of fact, it has more money than Beverly Hills. But the houses are insane, and a couple of those guys liked having parties, and their mom was gone, and then they got to be legendary parties. I mean, these were huge estates where they could build stages, and 1,000 people would show up, man. Down the street, imagine 1,000 people, walking down the street to go to a party at a house. It's just crazy, man. They don't do that stuff anymore now.
No.
Those guys played down the street. I remember when I was too young to go to any concerts like that, but they played 2 blocks down and 1 block over, and it sounded like they were right next door, man. And they were loud. They used to play all over the area. You could hear them everywhere. They were loud.
So is that what got you first into music? Because we'll just skip a couple moments ahead just in this sentence, but I know you would eventually work with David Lee Roth, which is a trip. But it
was a trip, man. It was a trip,
for lack of a better word. But I mean, in that time, is that what got you into music? Just being in that scene? Because it seems like it was everywhere. So, or did something else first make you pick up the guitar or bass?
I was actually playing before I spoke of hearing those guys.
Okay.
Making all that racket down the street, man. It's more fun if you're making the racket rather than receiving it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
A lot more fun. But like that Marshall ad says, pissing off the neighbors since 1966. That's about it. But I started playing in church. It goes back to having a guitar in my hand in 1970. I started playing on a baritone ukulele and a tenor banjo. Both my granddads played. Both my grandmas played. My mom was a singer. She didn't turn professional. She got married and had us kids. And but I was playing early. But in that 70s, I had strings in my hand. By 74, 73, 74, I was playing electric guitars. And then electric guitars with the two strings cut off to be a bass. And then 75 was a bass. I got a Fender bass in 75.
What was the rig you used back then, like when you first started out, man? You remember your first rig?
I bought a Fender Mustang bass then for $155. I used to either thumb it downtown, catch a bus or a ride or whatever, and I'd go all the way down Allen Avenue, where I lived at the top of Allen, and down to Colorado Boulevard, which is a main drag in Pasadena where the Rose Parade is and all that. And there's all kinds of music shops back then, one every 6 to 8 blocks, and I used to hit them all until they kick me out and I move on to the next one. And finally I got enough money to go buy. Seriously, it's a great place to spend a day. Great way to spend a day. I just sit on a stool, and you could sit on a stool and play guitars. It's not like Guitar Center is now, where everybody and their mother goes in there. This is back when we didn't have Guitar Centers. Well, they had the Guitar Center, that old one in Hollywood, but they didn't have. It wasn't as exposed. So I just go sit there and kind of thumb through the basses and then sit there and play them. And finally, came up with enough money, and the guy's like, they couldn't believe it, man. He wants to buy it, So I got, it was between that bass, that Fender Mustang bass, and another bass across town, and I opted for the Fender, which is probably, I'm more of a Fender guy than anything, the precision bass and the jazz bass. Although I've had a lot of Gibson, like Rippers and stuff. and Thunderbirds, but the Fenders are where I'm at. But that was in 1975, and my rig, I didn't. After I bought that bass, it took me a little while to get a rig, so I was hot wired stereos.
The old back of the stereo bit, yeah.
Hot wiring the mom and dad stereo is what was going on, and man, wow, it's how things have come a long way. But yeah, playing along with stuff on the radio, KKDJ, playing along with like early Kiss stuff was a lot of fun. And whatever came on the radio, I'd jam along to it. But I remember playing. I remember messing around with Jetbex Wired. My brother had some tapes. I never had a record collection. I couldn't afford them, so I just I listened to other people's records or the radio. And but the records that I was exposed to, I tried to cop as much stuff as I could. I was really into the old Alice Cooper band and the old Elton John band. I love Dee Murray. He's one of my favorite bass players ever, man. Those guys changed my life. And Dennis Dunaway, another guy, changed my life. I mean, wonderful playing, and that gig was mine, Elton John's gig. It's a sideman heaven, but I always liked that band. And Bob Birch got the gig when Dee Murray passed away. And I used to joke with him, how he had my gig, and it's just too bad what happened with Bob. He ended his life a few short years ago, and because he'd been hit by a car overseas, and the pain, he never really recovered. He just was a mess. His body was messed up, and from what I understand, he couldn't take the pain anymore. But so Davey Johnstone, who was the musical director, in a pinch, went out and grabbed Matt Bissonette. Matt is a friend, and he's a good bass player, and that's all cool. But those guys were the ones I listened to most because I had access to the music. And that was like the first rock I got into too, man. I love that stuff. It's what was happening at the time, and it's just I can taste the music, but it's still. I played in church for a while, and I had a couple. I went to a private school, and I had a couple teachers that were nuns that were really, really cool to me, and it kind of influenced me a lot.
Oh wow, okay.
And, Sister Nikki, I mentioned her in a bass magazine interview a few years ago, and she said, I found out she's still alive, man, and we actually got a chance to talk, and she remembered me, and
that's great.
I loved her. I loved her more than anything, and she's and there's a sister Dorothy. The rest of them could fly a kite, but those two were really really cool and wonderful people, and they're both still alive, and they encouraged me with music, and I just wanted to let them know that I never forgot them, and wanted them to be proud of where I've gone with it, and which is a lot of places for a guy who's never had a call card.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, what kind of a student were you growing up? If you were just hanging out in those guitar shops, if you were, just working odd jobs to save up money, or were you still going to school at the same time? Were you skipping class? Because I always try to get a sense of what little James was like.
I was a good student. Unfortunately, I had a twin brother who beat me to all that shit. So, I tried to level it out by doing the right thing. But I had my fair share of skipping classes. But when I started playing, I was still in really kind of grade school. I remember bringing my electric bass to grade school, and that back then I wasn't really like I could really cut class. But shortly after that, I went to couldn't find a proper school to high school to go to, but I ended up going to this place across town. It was a pretty rough school, but so I skipped a lot of classes there, and I went to work where I finally bought a good bass amp. It was a Fender Bassman 100, man, 412s and a 100-watt head. That's like a pea shooter now, but man, it sounded so good. It sounded really warm, and I just loved it, man. That was my first amp. I saved up. I worked, I'd go to school, check in and check out, man. Take the bus downtown and go earn some bread, so I could get some gear and stuff. But I was a good student. I got good grades, and
right on.
It's important. You got to learn something about something. But I didn't really like going to school, and as I didn't when I went to high school, I didn't I didn't, bring my bass to school every day. I left that stuff at home, and I just kept it kind of private.
You had a high school band?
Hell no. I had a band. I had a band through high school, but I wasn't in any band at high school, or I wasn't in the marching band.
Oh, I get it.
But we had a band,
like a garage band. Yeah. What were you guys called?
Actually, people still talk of today. It's I see people in there. They still remember us. It's bizarre. It's because of the backyard. It's because of the backyard party thing. People still recognize and remember. Yeah, it's really cool because we were so young, we were just high school whippersnappers. But the band, we made a lot of noise and played a lot of high profile parties around here, and there was lots of bands playing around back then. That was just the end of a really great era, up to 82 maybe, and
like the what's that band, Smile or whatever, and Pegasus? And those are all Hollywood bands, though, weren't they?
They were from my area, but
too, yeah.
Snow and Smile and Quiet Riot, all those.
Riot, yeah.
So I got a job playing with Eddie Money. I always wanted to play with Eddie's band when I first saw him at the Coliseum in '79, and then there's a chance I was going to join the band in '82 and play the US Festival with them. Oh, okay. So I was on deck with that. Wow. But I had actually joined the band. I think it was in '85 or '86, and Tommy Gervin, the guy, the guitar player, Smile. My buddies and I got stranded out the Starwood one night, and he and his girlfriend, he carried all the gear, in his van. Those guys used to pack that place, and they were a good, tight band. Smile was
hell yeah, great,
really fucking good band, and they laid it down. But Tommy drove me and the guys I was in a band with. We were much younger, and he took us home to each one of our doorsteps, man, and that was just amazing. Tommy was a cool guy. So when it came time to auditioning second guitar players, because I was already in Eddie's band, and there was already a main guitar player. Me and Kevin Gilbert got the gig the same day, and from Toy Matinee, and rest his soul. But it was up between Tommy Gervin and somebody else, and Tommy auditioned for Eddie before and didn't get it. So to pay back the favor, I told him, come over, man. I'll show him all the live stuff. Give him a head start. Going up against this other cat I didn't really know. So he showed up, and we ran all the live arrangements, and he got the gig. Awesome. He held and that broke up Smile. I'm sorry, but that broke up Smile. He was gone, man. He stayed. He hung with Eddie Money till just a couple of years ago, man. When Eddie finally told the band to call it quits, which is unfortunate because his kids were going to be playing with him. And I went and saw a show. I hadn't seen Eddie in quite some time, but some friends dragged me out to a show as a surprise, saying they're going to reunite me with an old friend, and I'd been going, where the hell are we going? And so I finally saw the marquee, and I said, oh, it's Eddie Money, So we saw the show, and I went back and said hello afterwards, and he looked up, he recognized me immediately. But Eddie's shown some mileage, man. He's done a lot of miles, but his kids were really good. He's kind of showing his kids the ropes, how to do it.
I think they have a reality show now, don't they, with him and his kids?
I heard about that, man. I've seen enough reality with Eddie, man, and his family. Including his Rottweilers, who were addicted to cocaine, man, because when we were working, he used to blow a half a gram out of his nose when he'd blow his nose. And the smelly Rottweilers in his house would start digging through the trash. Finally, they stopped digging through. They started tearing the trash cans apart. When he'd leave to go on tour, they ripped the house apart. So his Rottweilers were addicted to coke, man.
That's a good sight, man. The carpet crawling Rottweilers.
Oh, poor doggies.
Yeah, they're cringing, man. These poor dogs, and they were just big, smelly mutts, man. And they were, oh God, can you imagine them? But yeah, he was. That was a trip, man. But Tommy Gervin stuck with that band all the way through, and hung in there for a long, long time, man. So I was proud to help him get that job. He probably would have got it anyway, but. Hey, that little surfer, Tommy Kirkin. Remember that little surfer? Here's an Eddie. Hey, I got a hold of the escort service. They're on their way, and they're holding.
That's pretty good. I like that. That's pretty good.
Eddie's such a New Yorker, man. He's crazy.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. No, I've met him not in the capacity you have, but on some Long Island stations I've worked at. He's been nice enough to come down to the studio and do some interviews. So yeah, always very nice, always very gracious. You know, I would like to him. I mean, I guess if this is for him, the time for him to retire, I guess from touring. You know, it's I guess, you know, not everyone is going to do it until they die, like Lemmy.
Like Mick Jagger and like Mick Jagger. Well, yeah, Lemmy too, man. I hope they all ride it into shore, man. Mick 74 is still doing it. So is Roger Daltrey. I mean, those guys are still doing it, man. It's amazing. I remember when people were bitching about, you know, becoming 30 and still doing this, you know. And we're over double that. So, you know, to heck with anybody who says we can't do what we want to do, man. You know, those guys are kicking down the doors and they're still doing it.
They are, and I want to get to your time with Roger Daltrey as well. But I want to know when was the catalyst for you to know that you can do this for a living? Yes, you love it. You've been, you know, going to the guitar shops. You've been, you know, you're coming from a very musical family. But was it when you were with Eddie Money that you were like, okay, I can do this for a living, or was that just a fun moment at the time?
You know, I still haven't, you know, considered doing this, that I can do this stuff for a living.
Fair.
But the only reason I still play is because I really enjoy it, and when I stop enjoying it, I'll stop playing. And you know, and as far as working goes, I always say yes. You know, we can figure it out later, but yeah, sure. You know, let's explore it.
So wait, you're saying you're an automatic yes?
Stay in trouble all these years. You know, that's how I've been able to stay in trouble.
Sorry, Raz, go ahead.
Oh wait, so you're just like, if an act calls you up, you're just automatic yes, and then like that, if you don't like it later, you just.
I'm open. I'm open to hear what they have to offer or what's going on, and you know, I'm a slut, but I'm not a damn, you know, that much of a slut. But you know, something if it's something I can fit into and work for all of us, you know, for everybody involved, then it's cool. You know,
you're a slut with standards.
Yeah, I'm a slut with very low standards.
You're a prostitute, not a whore.
Yes, that's right. And I give you your money back after you're done if you give me a reach around, right?
Nice.
No, but honestly, that's what's kept me going. You know, sometimes doing gigs that aren't really high profile gigs or not as high paying gigs, sometimes it opens the door to even better stuff. And it's just kind of strange how it works. Yeah. You know, you have to remain open to things. Like when I went, you know, when I met West Arkeen, you know, I was doing a couple out of town dates with this group, and the keyboard player, Gregg Buchwalter, who was playing, was telling me about this guy West, and he had these weird chords, and he was working with Guns N' Roses guys, and so I said, oh, you know, yes. He said, you should come down, man, meet him. So I did, and that's how the Outpatience thing. That's how I started getting involved with West, because the three of us were, you know, we got together, and then you know, West was just getting clean off of dope, and you know, it wasn't any secret that he had his troubles with that stuff on and off over the years. Actually, I wouldn't know a lot about it until after he passed away, because that wasn't really my thing. You know, it's a really that dope scene in Hollywood. It's a really dark place, man, and you know, it wasn't my scene. But so we were all kind of sober, and that's where it started. You know, I loved. We got along immediately. You know, me and West. I just liked the guy. You know,
hey, he was fun.
Our dads are both named Skippy. You know, and we do.
No way.
Yeah. I like the peanut butter. You know.
Oh, for sure.
Were they smooth or were they chunky?
Yeah, it's smooth and chunky, man.
Thank you, Raz. I was about to make that terrible joke, but I'm glad you said it before I did.
What about the, hey, you got delivered it better. Hey, you got chocolate in my peanut butter. Who was that? Donnie Most? Donnie Most was on that commercial, wasn't that? The guy from Happy Days?
Hey, you got your chocolate in my peanut butter. Peanut butter in my chocolate.
I do remember that.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that commercial.
Yeah, he was a poor man's Danny Partridge, right?
Something like that. Yeah, right. And Danny Partridge, he played a Mustang bass.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Or he held one while the
Yeah, well, I used to watch him play, and I go, man, that's right. He's on TV, man. But I mean, I'm playing the same bass right there. But I never thought I had it made in the music business as far as, I could do this. I always knew I could play, but I wasn't in competition with anybody. It was more of trying to learn more about myself and. A bunch of people waste their time if they're spending their time trying to be like somebody else. I mean, I try to emulate my favorite players, but I'm not trying to be them,
Did you have maybe a holy shit moment? I'm working with this person?
Every day, man. Every day I work with somebody that's
fair.
A lot of the guys, well, David Lee Roth there's a holy shit moment when he called me up and yelled at me one day after leaving rehearsal when at the time I was supposed to leave. I was doing a record across town with my actor friend Joe Penny, and I had to split it. I'd agreed to when they asked me to join his band, Dave's band, I agreed to go to Van Halen Manor, which is Dave's house, the Roth house, from 12 to 3, and then from 3 to 6, I'd split out. After 3 o'clock, I'd leave to Hollywood to go out to finish Joe's record up. So I left at 3, like I was supposed to do, and Dave called me up later that night and said, it's never leave without talking to me, and, kind of growled in football talk and hung up. I was like, whoa, man, I always heard about this, but this is my first personal experience. And so that lasted till Monday, and where I had my friend, a hairdresser friend of mine in town, was passed out on my bed. We were out drinking and goofing off, and then he passed out in my bed. I'm sitting on the edge of it going, well, I'm not going to get any sleep tonight, man. Every arms and legs were spread apart in every corner, so I'm like, screw this. So I went downstairs and called Dave up at like 5 in the morning and just screamed at him. I decided, if I'm going to take it, I'm not going to take this shit from. If I take that type of treatment from a guy, from anybody, man, if I don't say something about it, I'm just chopped liver to begin with. If I'm going to take that type of stuff, so I dropped a daisy cutter on him, hung the phone up, and said, "Well, there goes that job." But Dave called back before I left the room, and we worked it out. But this is a little football talk. I just said, you can't talk to me like that. I don't accept it, man. I wish you all the best, man, but you got to get somebody else. And, I basically put my job on the line for principle. And I really needed the work badly. I mean, desperately. And Dave was a pretty high profile gig even back then on the tail end of his, before he got all big again. But it was a big gig for me. The Van Halens were heavy hitters. And Dave's no joke. So it was, I thought about it all weekend and came up with you know what? I'm not going to take it, man. Not even from Dave, man.
Well, that says a lot about you. And I feel like I'm kind of the same way, no matter at certain radio stations. I'm like, if you treat me this way, get the fuck out of here. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Radios, they're hard. It's hard jobs. Yeah. It's hard to find a job in radio. But absolutely. I have the same kind of. It's not an arrogance thing. It's not like an ego thing. It's just talk to me like a person.
Exactly. And you set the standards of how you wish to be treated. If somebody treats you poorly, you have to say something and say, hey, wait a minute, stop. Wait a minute. You have to explain to them if they haven't learned, how to treat people properly. Maybe you can help them, and that's right. Because if I let that go or you let that go, I mean, everybody else thinks it's okay to treat you that way too. Right. Open the floodgates up. And I wasn't trying to make any statement. I was just saying, you know what? It upset me so much that you called me up and yelled at me for doing nothing wrong, man. That's it, man. If I'd done something wrong, I'll accept it and I'll take it. Right. And I'll listen and make adjustments. But if I'd done nothing wrong, that's not a welcome to the camp, which I hadn't had. And this is 2 weeks into my tenure with him. I said, man, you know what? This is lame, This is lame. I love you, Dave. I'm on your side, but, I'm stepping back. I'll get you, I hope you find somebody else that can deal with that stuff because I'm not going to, And that was it. After that, we were kind of pals, Pretty soon, Dave's calling me every day. Hey, let's go do this and that, bouncing stuff off me. So I became kind of the guy who whispers in the guy's ear. I could get things done through him. Talk to him, no problem, man. I'll go right to the source, man. Not even through management. I'll just talk straight to Dave, which is exactly what I did, man. Save me some trouble.
You earned his respect by standing up to him. It sounds like you earned his respect.
You know what? Maybe so, because the guy listened to me, and I had this. I was part of decision-making processes, which it really wasn't any of my business. But he trusted my opinion because he knew that it wasn't bought and paid for. You knew that, I'd tell him to go fly a kite, and I did, only because I was sticking up for myself, not because I don't like him or disrespect him. I was standing up for myself. And, a lot of these guys will do that. They'll try. It's like a test. They'll knock you off balance to see where your center of gravity is, and they test you out. They want, there's nobody that stands up in the middle of the stage where the X is that doesn't want swinging dicks behind them. I'm telling you, because when they're throwing D-sized batteries at you, you want razors behind you, and maybe that's just maybe that's just the test that they give you. But I mean, it's I learned from experience. If you're going to accept that stuff, it doesn't get any better. And I exercise my experience and put my job on the line using my experience. And it wasn't an easy decision because I'm sure I could brush up on my ass kissing, but I just wasn't ready at that time.
No, I hear you, and I know we can go on and on. I mean, I love Dave Lee Roth. His autobiographies is one of my favorite rock autobiographies that I've read. But
Which one is it?
Crazy from the Heat, right?
Well, one of those books. I'm the one who got him started on it.
On the book itself?
Yeah, the book itself, man. The concept and the idea. We were sitting after hours like we always did, having a little this and a little that, and talking about putting it all in a ball and writing it down. I said, look, man, before you go to bed every night, just write something down for 10 minutes. Something you remember about the old days. It's really good, man, and got them all fired up because I could do that with Dave. I could do that. Pretty soon, I'm going up hanging out in the house and going upstairs into his room, driving his fucking car, which I happened to actually ended up with the same Mercedes as him, as a convertible SEC, but it was badass. Dave would be too tired. He's like, here, James, just take the car. So I take the long way home in that old black Benz with the racing tires and racing rims, and the convertible is just badass, man. I drive by everybody's house on the way home. But, I found out, I found myself hanging out a little more than, beyond work. We just kind of became friends and pals and stuff.
That's great.
But that's how the book started. He gave me credit in it, too, and I actually appear in it.
That's great. I'm glad that you did, because it gave me more insight into David Lee Roth. I'm sorry, Raz, go ahead.
I was telling him, thank you. That's great, man. Who knows if the guy would ever, the hardest part is just writing down those first, page or the first 3 days in a row, writing something down and
exactly
on the path, which is good. He might still be thinking about doing it if it wasn't, so that's great. Thanks.
He even hired his sister Lisa to come out on the road with us and take notes about like all our after gig traveling, where everybody's fired up and telling stories and stuff, and she just kind of would observe and take notes. It was like almost like a stenographer or something, but he got pretty serious about it.
No,
but his ideas about having to have a second part of the book, Van Halen AD, after Dave, or something like that. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot of things from that man, and he's a smart guy, as smart as they come. Hard-working dude, too.
To read his book, I learned a lot more about him than I've seen on MTV and his interviews, because he's always the game show host kind of Dave. But I learned about how learned about the world he is and how traveled he is. So it's good that we have that. However, to go back to before, and of course, one of the reasons why you're on this podcast, it's a Guns N' Roses podcast, and that being West Arkeen. I know, so for me, again, I know my listeners know, and I know Raz knows, and I think I told you, James, that I'm only 34. So GNR was already broken up by the time I really became cognizant of who they were. And I knew West Arkeen's name, initially, because he's on Appetite for Destruction. It's like, so who is this guy? So, of course, over the years, I've done some research. I've watched some, the very few videos of him and Axl. So I have a certain perception of who he was, but it's very, very small because there's not a lot out there about him. Now, Raz was telling us before we got on the air with you that, he knew West as well. So, and Raz can help with this part. I want you to kind of like character build who West Arkeen was. Like, what kind of a person was he? The good stuff. Was he funny? Was he smart? What kind of presence did he have? Because I have no idea.
Wes is smart. Wes is a smart guy, no doubt about it. And I used to love to make him laugh, man. Raz, you go, man. You go. I'm gonna listen up.
Yeah,
Go on.
I just, like you said, make him laugh, but it was easy to make him laugh. He was just he was just always good to go, like for fun times or rowdy,
Totally.
rowdy stuff, like, you know, what's that, Animal House?
Okay.
You know that movie Animal House, John Belushi, and yeah. So that's, I always think of Wes, man, and like Cousin It in the Animal House, because he just, you know, had his long ass, super long hair before everybody else had. You know, everybody had long hair, but Wes was like just long bangs. He'd play and he'd just be like hidden in his hair. And
you mean Cousin It from Addams Family?
Addams Family, yeah. So like Animal House and Cousin It, that you got like the,
Totally.
plus he,
And like in his house, I heard you know, back then his house, the kitchen would be a frickin' like a bomb went off in it. Every room would look like a bomb went off, except the guitar room where all his guitars were. That was like a museum, man. All the guitars. That room was climate controlled and kept, you know, neat at all times. You know,
priorities, man, priorities.
He loved his guitar. He loved his guitars, man. And I'm sorry to cut you off, Raz. If I could, you know, if I could have buried him with his dot neck 335 as 59, which I knew he would have wanted, man, I couldn't fit the guitar in the coffin with him, man. But yeah.
I remember, like, when he died, I wanted to start a rumor that he got buried with, like, a bunch of guitars so people would, like, dig him up all the time, just like Benny Hill.
Right on. Yeah. It's funny because, man, you know, it's just, yeah. But the guitar, you know, it's just such a long story to what happened after Wes passed away. I learned so much about what I knew nothing about. But back to what type of guy he was. When we were living in Studio City, I got a place in Studio City, and we had the, you know, we're setting up the boards, the 24-track board, and we were recording and started actually moving on to others, you know, recording acoustic guitar stuff. I had an upright bass at the house, and you know, last song we recorded was called "The Common Shadow." It's West Arkeen, myself, and the singer. What the hell's his name? Oh God.
Was that Patrick or Tony or
Patrick? Yeah, Patrick.
Yeah,
Stone.
Patrick Stone.
Was it Patrick Stone, right?
Yeah, he's in a band called Butterside right now. They're pretty good, man. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Butterside, yeah, man. I saw him at the Whiskey, and I played. I liked the stuff when I heard it. I thought Patrick was really cool. Wes was trying to groom him to be the next Axl Rose, and because
I always thought Patrick was a star, man. I always thought that guy was a star. He's
got you know, he's come a long way, man. I'm really proud of him. He's come a long way since those days when we was hanging out at our house. A lot of guys would come and hang out at our house, just because West, you know. I mean, we'd sit there and we'd jam, and West had a bunch of friends coming over, Jimbo Estrella, you know, all his writing buddies, Jimbo, and just a really eclectic group of people. And they all had special qualities, you know, right, Raz?
Yeah. I mean, it was a good group. Like he attracted talent and like people that were fun to be around too. Like he didn't have a bunch of fucking dickheads around, you know.
Right. And then what I understood was, you know, Robert Plant would show up at this house one day, you know, and he was like casual, you know. It's like it was nothing to him, but he, you know, West wrote songs for a lot of people. But he you know, he was just like I had a friend, and my friend was in a group called Wildside that I guess Wes was producing or writing some songs for. But he'd see them around town. He'd go, "Hey, Wildside." He'd call him Wildside. He wouldn't call him by their name. He'd go, "Hey, Wildside." That was kind of how Wes did. He was a trip, man. He was a trip. But the guys in Guns N' Roses came out to play on the Outpatience record only because West asked them to, because they certainly weren't talking amongst themselves. But each one of them came out to appear on that record because of respect for him and also appreciation. That's my belief.
So, yeah, tell us how that came to be, because, you know, initially my thought was the last recorded track that both Axl and Slash were on was the interview with the Vampire, Sympathy for the Devil. For years I thought this. And then, you know, now that I'm doing this podcast and learning more and more about the history of GNR, this Outpatience record, which only came out in Japan in 1996, and then it was released everywhere, right, in the early 2000s. So it's...
After Wes died, the attorney, I called his attorney, and this guy came down, a real scumball, man. He removed dictaphone tapes and took a couple masters, took West watch, which he'd bought West with his own money. These people, there's a lot of people that just really, took West for a buggy ride that he trusted, and this guy's one of them anyway. They people that didn't belong having that master and making deals with licensing deals with that thing. They changed the cover of it. They changed everything. They even changed the titles, man.
Wow.
They're trying to tout that. They're trying to sell it with the Guns N' Roses name attached to it. Oh. Yeah, the guys all played on the record, but I mean, it's still being sold now, and none of the guys in the band, they were all cut out of it, and it was a real bad scene, man. It was terrible what happened with that thing, but the music speaks for itself, and it's they're selling. You could buy it at Kmart, somewhere, or some record shop today probably. So it wasn't just out in Japan. It came out, they licensed that thing in as many places as they could. I guess there's a dispute between his family members, his brothers and sisters, and it was just a huge mess, man. It really was. The band got together and tried to, get one attorney to do some things for all of us, that, for the band's behalf, on the band's behalf, and it was just way too far gone. I mean, it's just too much red tape, and it would have cost a fortune in attorney's fees. Well, just nothing was on the band's side. So
unreal.
It was just terrible what happened. Heartbreaking.
Well, let's focus at least on the positive part of it, because there are a lot of the GNR members that were involved. Izzy / Axel, even Robert John did the photography, right?
Yeah, and some other friends, Howard Tiemann, who now has a hugely successful tattoo shop. Howard came in to play some piano, and I insisted that Duff play. Hell, West asked me if it was cool if Duff played. I said, "Man, are you kidding? Absolutely, man, it's a must." Because Duff and West was tight with those guys before the Outpatients, and I wouldn't have had it any other way, man. I wish actually Duff played in more than one tune, but at least he played on one. And actually, we did basics up at Duff's house up in the Hollywood Hills. We did the basics for that record, and some of it at A&M, if I remember correctly. And it was just really cool. Duff was really cool about it and helpful. Really cool guy. Really supported West, which was just a little liner note. After West, like a day after West died, I got a call from him, and I was just in pieces. I was in shock, really, and because that thing I tumbled for a while, and what could I have done? I was actually there, and there's things that happened in the house that night I still can't explain. But Duff said, "Hey, man, it's there's nothing you could have done." He said it's kind of like it wasn't your fault. He just kind of understood that. Well, I really appreciated him calling, and he didn't, I didn't really know Duff from Adam, and it was really cool of him to call and kind of console me like that, because he knew Wes really well. And, I'd go out of town, I'd come home, and a couple of things would be out of place, but I never noticed. I never really occurred to me. But I would later find out that every time I would go out of town for a weekend or week, something, the fire department and the paramedics would be at the house. I knew nothing about this stuff, man. Nothing.
Because West was staying at your house, right?
It was our house. It was my
our
place.
House.
Yeah, I leased the place. Yeah, our house. No, it's our place.
Yes.
I leased it.
In the middle of
it was a nice place, man. We had a kind of a brat pack vibe to it, big wraparound fireplace, and it was expensive, man. And utilities included, so we had the fireplace going 24/7, just like the AC on full blast.
Oh, wow.
All the fan. That place was lit up, man. It was a lot of fun.
So there'd just be craziness going on and with West, and you had no idea by the time you got home. Like he was like the kid, like when the parents are away throwing a party and they're trying to fix the house before you get home, that you notice nothing's wrong.
Man, West. I guess they wanted to keep that stuff, keep it private. But and I really didn't know. I didn't know that all this stuff had happened until after he passed away. But. They didn't even ask me any questions. They just, like I was there, they didn't even ask me. They didn't even question me. I mean, that's how much of a slam dunk it was for them. It's like, wow, that's really bizarre, you know.
Wow.
'Cause they knew what the deal was, and so many times I didn't know that it was like that. But you know, when we cut the record, Izzy Stradlin came out. I guess he'd been in Indiana. He packed it in and moved to Indiana and started riding trials motorcycles and became state champion, I guess. Pretty badass, man. So he came in and we cut some live songs with him, and cut some live songs live for the Outpatience record that he played on. Also wound up in Vegas, one of them.
Yeah. So then, what was it like recording with Izzy? Was that your first time meeting him?
No, we'd met before. He came to see a group that I was involved in called Dear Mr. President. It played the rock scene. And, you know, a lot of groups would come to see that band. It was kind of a popular local band. But the last time I saw Izzy, we were upstairs in the bathroom and kind of hanging out a little bit. And then the next time I saw him was backstage at the Stones in '89. And when he played with Axl at Atlantic City. And then the next time I'd see him would be at the studio. He came with West, and you know, he cut his hair short, and we played some of his songs too. We recorded more songs than just the Outpatient songs. We recorded some songs for him, and I don't know what he did with them. One was a really cool Elvis Presley song. I don't remember which one it was. But
oh, okay.
It was all done live too. All that stuff was done live, and it sounded great.
So there could be Izzy stuff featuring James Hunting out there, but we just haven't heard it yet.
I don't know about featuring me, but I played bass on it.
Well,
yeah.
Well, you know what?
Abraham Navarro, Junior on drums, and he was just guitar.
Is he sang on that?
He sang. Yeah, he sang on some of the stuff. Yeah, I believe so. If I remember correctly. Yeah, I believe so. Yes. We
DNR did. Oh, go ahead.
We cut more songs, and you know, he played in some Outpatient songs, but we recorded some songs for him too. That were, you know, we're just jamming and having fun. And I never heard anything about him since.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, because I know a lot of listeners love that, you know, those songs that may be in existence, things that may be out there. So that's cool to know, especially since
they are. They are out there. One of them, an Elvis song, I remember it well. I don't remember the song, but I remember, you know, there's a couple songs that we did that went Izzy's way. You know, and I think it was kind of stuff he wanted to do, and the band could play. You know, we had Abe Borrell Jr. on drums. He's been with McCartney for years. We had West on guitar, me on bass, Buchwalter on keys. I mean, we laid it down quickly and had a good time doing it.
That's cool.
Izzy doesn't talk a lot. He just does, you know. Really cool guy.
Well, the fact that if he doesn't talk a lot, that you guys really bonded. Like, yeah, he could have just came in and did that track for West, but that he bonded with you and the band to record songs for him. I think that's a really cool moment.
Yeah, he's you know, I can see why he and West, you know, West would play bass on the Juju stuff, the Juju Hounds. I can see where those guys got along. They didn't really, they weren't really talkers, but they got a lot done, man. West and Izzy wrote a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So what can you?
gunsnroses sound, I think.
Yeah, no, you're hard pressed to, you know, for anyone really to argue that Izzy. I guess our last episode was with Alan Niven, and he always likes to call Izzy the heart of the soul of Guns N' Roses, and he knows as much as well as anybody else. But what can you tell us about? I mean, this is kind of like the big song on the record, and that's "Anxious Disease." With Axl and Slash. So GNR, they were broken up at the time when this happened?
Hating each other, yeah.
So did Axl, were the parts separate? Were in the same room? What was the process in making that song?
Well, it would have been kind of fun to have them in the same room, give them some gloves and film it. but put that in the background of the song. But no, they came in separately. They came in separately. And that was definitely a separate. They all came in separately to do their thing, and you know, that's just the way. That's the way that, you know, West could get it to work. You know, they wanted to help, but they just didn't want to help as a unit. They wanted to help West out individually, so they came in and did their parts, and You know,
Were they? I mean, obviously they were okay with being on the same song, though. There was nothing like, I don't want to be in a song with him. Never mind just being in the same room, but I don't even want to be in the same song with him. Nothing like that happened.
Maybe they didn't know it at the time, and we all kept our mouth shut about it.
Okay, very slick of West.
No, I mean, there's plenty of stuff to go around. He did plenty for those guys, man. That's the least they could have done for him. The very least is to show up and honor him by playing on his record, man. West finally got his deal to where he could do some of his songs, and it's damn right those guys should show up and support him as they should. That's my belief. Right, and they did, and Duff opened his house up. We recorded there. I basically played on Duff's rig, and I don't even know if I played his bass or not, but he's telling me that his bass had kind of a deformed neck, is like a factory second, and he got used to it that way, and this and that and the other, and couldn't really play any other basses. But he was just very gracious, and I'm glad he played on the record, because I wouldn't have had it any other way. I mean, some people go, no, I want to, I want to play bass. No, man. He should have been on more than one track, and I actually jammed Wes up about that. How come he's only playing one song? It was cool to have him on there. Those guys, Anyway, so that's how it went down, and the song he played was kind of a really punky song, and there's really the bass was kind of mixed down, and it is. But it's cool, he still appeared, and, the recordings went smoothly, and Anxious Disease is a cool song. The band sounded good live playing it. It's just incredible, just incredible.
How many gigs did you guys play together, like live gigs?
We never played one gig together.
Did
Not
you?
One.
I thought you guys played, man.
We rehearsed for a while. We were supposed to be doing the ZZ Top World Tour as an opening band. And, first of all, there's a guy named George Beige who was good friends with West, and those guys were partners in crime and partners in writing. And West loved George's voice, and he was to be the lead singer of the Outpatients, as he'd sung with a lot of West's projects in the past. But George, when the band got cut loose some money, we all received a little kind of an advance on the record. The night before we were supposed to go in and start carving that turkey, George was found dead in West's apartment, right near the Capitol Records building in the hills of Hollywood behind that, and it was tragic because it threw the whole project off. I mean, how is he ever going to replace George? George was the heart and soul of what Wes was doing and about the music, and those guys developed a lot of these songs before I even was even in the picture, and they had such a really cool groove, and so it was terrible, to have that loss of the singer of the band. The first day of recording, man, we find out that one of the members of the band is dead. It's just a tragic thing to know. Is we were all in shock. Anyway, it took us months and months and months from looking all over the Hell's Off Acre for a singer that Wes would be happy with, and we finally found a guy, and this guy who appears on the record, Mike Schotten, he's Canadian and could sing his entire ass off. Mike did a wonderful job. Came in and laid it down, but he didn't have as much of a connection with West as George did. Mike was more he was very much business, and go back up to Canada, call me when you're ready and this and that. But the band unfortunately wasn't able to do one show live. It would have been good too.
Did you record, because I know obviously technology was different, but were any of the rehearsals recorded, or did you record whether it video or audio? Is there any sort of demo, anything else out there that we could possibly hear other than the record itself?
It's funny, Brandon, you mentioned that because I had a house fire about 3-4 years ago, and it burned everything up but me and my life. And because I wasn't there, but I lost pretty much everything. But I believe that I believe that some of those rehearsals at a place called Mates were recorded. I don't personally have those recordings, but and one of the drummers we're auditioning at the time also is dead. That I might have the recordings. He passed away about 10 years ago. But what I do have, I'm pretty sure, is I got everybody dictaphones for Christmas one year. Those Sony little voice activated things, and everybody loved them, man. And we used to sit around when we were jamming, and I'd have that thing on. And there's a couple songs I wrote with Wes that are on those. And I haven't even gone through those tapes. They're in a box somewhere. But there's some stuff of Wes and Jimbo, Estrella, me, a few other guys playing. I mean, there's lots of tape of things. And on those dictaphone tapes, I have a box of them. And I haven't gone through those. But there's stuff there if you're interested in hearing it.
Yeah,
I haven't heard them. I haven't listened to that stuff since before Wes passed away. But
sure,
those little mini cassettes, like the ones that are like a fifth of the size of a regular size cassette.
The little micro cassettes,
like a DAT tape, like a DAT tape or something.
More than that,
analog, but it's tiny.
Like the one that goes into a little tape, like those old-fashioned dictaphone for those old-fashioned phone answering machines, the little tapes.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know those ones? Those ones.
I do remember that vaguely. I know I'm young, but I still remember dinosaurs and the Civil War and some things before my time. So,
damn, James, you have to transfer all that stuff to digital, man.
You know, it's man, I can't even explain. I haven't gone back to that stuff. It took me a long time to get over that. I was really in bad shape after that. I just left a lot of stuff alone. But I don't think it burned up with the house. I don't think it burned up. It was in a safe somewhere, and I hope it still is. All of that stuff. It'd be chilling to listen to it though, because there's just us hanging out and talking and playing music.
Well, whenever you feel like, I get that there are certain like recordings. I was told a long time ago that I should record like conversations with my grandparents. I know it's a little bit of a right turn here, but I'm glad that I have those now that they're gone, and it takes a lot, just for that when someone's gone. And I can't imagine, there are these recordings that other people want to hear. Nobody cares about the recordings of me and my grandparents. But for you to get past that's what our first few conversations were, how emotional you still are about the loss of your friends. And it's palpable. I can feel it. You're not even saying it matter-of-factly. Like, you could still care and maybe not show the emotion, but I was able to tell the emotion through the phone, through our first conversation. So all these years later. So, whenever, if ever, you feel it's appropriate to go back and listen to it, not just, for my selfish needs or my listeners' selfish needs of wanting to hear this stuff, but for you and have these conversations after, of course, because I would want to have you on again because you had plenty more stories to tell in addition to, West. We all want to get more into David Lee Roth and Roger Daltrey. But I want to, with this, like,
what talk about for hours,
Yeah, and I don't want to keep you here forever. And certainly, Raz, I know, is a very busy life. He has a million different projects going on, so I'm not going to keep you guys here too much longer. But I want to know, what can you share about what happened with West?
West was bummed. He was starting to get distraught because we were trying to get all the business stuff taken care of to get the band out on the road, and he's getting impatient, and he started to use, he's starting to use again and hide it. He was hiding it, and he just kept slipping, man, and he kept slipping, and he was slipping, and I never lived with somebody that had a problem like that before, and I just didn't see the signs, and I kicked myself in the ass for not knowing better. But there were signs there that I missed, and it's weird. Like, Wes was in a really good space, like for 6-9 months, a year before he passed away. So I could see, I had no idea that he was using it again too. And I actually, like, when he was like at the
the worst part, like a couple years before that or the year before or whatever. I didn't see him much, but he was coming around my studio quite a lot, at least like a couple times a month, like all the way up until like I saw him like 2 weeks before he passed. So, and he was good, man. So, you know, like we all kind of miss it. Either he was good at hiding it, you know, or I mean, I just heard he got in a fire and then he got out of the hospital. And next thing I heard, he was dead, you know. So,
you know what happened with this brick? We had a big brick oven in the kitchen, and the auto light was screwed up on it. So we used to have to light it with one of those little lighters with the extension on it, or a match or whatever. I know when we first moved in there, I was showing somebody that brick oven, and it turned on, and I tell you, it singed my eyebrows, my eyelashes, and everything. And that's what I thought had happened with him. But apparently he'd been basing and it blew up in his face because it looked like somebody had taken a blowtorch to him. I wasn't there at the time, but something near the brick oven in the kitchen had burned through the linoleum floor of our place there, and it, whatever it was hot, and he was burned pretty badly. And I was like, what the hell? He was literally hanging his face out the window of the car because it was burning so badly. I didn't know that he was doing freebase. I had no idea, man, none. And so, he recovered from that, and then, but that was from the brick oven. He got burned.
Okay.
We recovered from that, and then. Every week, for 5-6 weeks before he finally, his final night, he had a steady group of old girlfriends coming by to visit, one each weekend, and he'd spend the weekend with them. And it's kind of strange, but almost as if he was saying goodbye. And, some of them would have their little boys or little girls there along with them. And I'd look after the little girl, and go take her to McDonald's, get us, little happy meal, whatever, while Wes was hanging out with this friend, And, they one by one, they came in to visit. And Wes had, a lot of people that liked him, a lot of girls that liked him. And they come and hang for the weekend. And then, once that was over, it's when what happened. But I was home that night. I came home. I pulled in. It's probably a little bit before midnight. West Bronco was there. I mean, if his Bronco was there, 99 out of 100 times he was there. So he was there as far as I'm concerned. I go inside. Don't hear any sign of life. I just say, hey, nobody's here. And that's strange. So I was vacuuming downstairs, and when you blow drying your hair, you think you hear a telephone ringing or something. Well, it was like that, but I thought I heard Wes call my name. So I shut the vacuum off and, ran upstairs. Hello, Wes. Hello. Did you call me? Hello. No reply, none at all. And so I go back downstairs, fire up the vacuum, continue cleaning up the house a little bit. Nothing, man. And then I heard him call me again. Went upstairs again. This time a little closer, kind of looking in his room, I never went into his room when he wasn't home. It's just, that's not a cool thing to do. It's not a cool feeling either. We just weren't like that. He had these 2 executive suites upstairs, and we were next to each other. But, I never, always respected his privacy, and it probably would have been cool to go into his room when he wasn't there, but just didn't feel right for me. But it happened like 3 times. I thought I heard him calling me, and this is what really messed me up because, I next the following morning is when we found him in his bathroom, and I'd never walked far enough into his bedroom. Wow. To see into the bathroom, which is 10 feet further, and
Oh wow.
He may have been calling me for help or something, and it's just that alone really. It really was upset me so much. As like, maybe I could have done something, but I never walked. I had no business in that West room, when he wasn't home. So, But that night, so I finished doing all the things I would do, and then they're going, where the fuck is he, man? Why is it? He should be here. Where would he be at this hour? He's always home. His car's out front, and where could he be? What's going? This is really, it's kind of strange, because he was always, if his car was there, he was there. He never took off with anybody, or he drive himself. And so I went to bed, and next morning I woke up, and I had this kind of the wall mount bed setups, with the mirrors and all that stuff, and mounts up against the wall. Well, I had this little vase, and it had a bunch of dried flowers and roses, and I was covered in them from head to toe on my bed. Somebody they sprinkled them on top of me as I was sleeping. And I usually notice when somebody's been in my room or been somebody close to me when I'm sleeping, I'll wake up. It's just a natural instinct.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know who was in my room that night or what happened, why I didn't wake up. I would have known. But the vase wasn't knocked over, and I had knocked it over, and I didn't. I had no idea how those rose petals covered the bed, covering me, my body, and I'll never know who was in the house that night or what happened. If it was West, I'll never know. And it bothers me because I thought maybe somebody broke in and hot-shotted him or something. I don't know. I don't know. And so those are unknowns, but it was a really hard day. It's not an easy thing to live through, and because I just didn't know. I wasn't. And I wish I'd have walked in his room. Maybe I could have saved him. I don't know. But I found Wes in his bathroom, and he was cold. It was too late.
Well, first, I have to say I'm so sorry, James, that you had to go through that. I know it was obviously a loss for you, Raz, as well, being a friend. But
it's terrible. We've had a lot of friends, man. That,
sure. But that's awful. And I'm sure many people have said this to you, and it makes me, and I like that story about Duff reaching out to you, and you didn't know him that well, but he still reached out to you. But
man, I needed to hear that. I needed to hear that from anybody, man, because I was just
blaming yourself. You can't. It's not like you saw him and you're like, oh, he's okay, he'll be fine. But it's like, I get it. You're just, you're not going to go into his room. It's just one of those really, I can't think of, I want to think of a more appropriate word, but just misfortune that you didn't. And who knows, maybe he already was gone. You don't know, but just again, I'm just really sorry that you have that memory.
I really don't know, but I heard him call me over the vacuum, and man, I shut that fucker off and I ran up there, wonder where he was, because we worked together. We cook. He liked to cook. I like to cook. He cooked me dinner. I cook him dinner. We were a team,
Yeah.
At that time, and I just, it was just, what if, what if, we recorded a song. The last song we recorded was called "The Common Shadow," and with Patrick Stone, West Arkeen, and myself, and with a Taylor guitar with Wes playing a tambourine, and an upright bass. An upright bass I played in. It sounded huge, just the three of us. We went over to Cherokee, and we're recording over there, and it sounded really big. It was exciting, and that's when he was trying to face Patrick and, kind of grooming him. Been rehearsing, working with him, Patrick, on the song for, at least a month, kind of trying to get him to get the kind of the vibe of how it's supposed to be sung.
Mm-hmm.
But that song was played at West's funeral, and there's a waltz in the middle of it where Wes sings "I'm Not Alive" and over and over and over. It's just kind of chilling, almost as it was meant to. He wrote that song for that purpose. And maybe he did.
Perhaps.
It's a neat song.
Maybe.
It's a neat song. If I could dig up some of this stuff, I'll share it with you guys. I don't know if you've ever heard any of this stuff, but
No, please. I mean, I want I'm sure you guys feel the same. I want West's memory to be out there. I mean, I don't know, obviously, as much as you guys do. And the more I learn about him, I'm like, I want to learn more. It makes me more, have more of an appetite for lack, not to be punny, but for his material and what he contributed to Guns N' Roses, and as a person.
He had a very unique style. West did, very, very, very unique. I mean, there's artistry there. There's artistry there.
Sure. So
artistry's rare. Artistry's not common. Artistry's rare. But with West, there was artistry there. It really was.
Well, he certainly knew how to pick his friends and his bandmates. He certainly had a knack for that. So, what would you want people to take away from that record? If anything lyrically, musically that happened in the studio, like what would you want the Outpatients to be remembered for?
Oh God!
I know it's kind of a difficult question. There's a little bit of a radio-y question, but
it's okay. Just hopefully, you get a chance to hear it and hear how good the music was. That was a chance for Wes to do his music, and you can hear a lot of Alice in Chains type of stuff in there.
Sure.
And West style woven through with the Guns N' Roses stuff. You can hear West and Guns N' Roses all the time, except he'd started playing with the guys. He was going over and working when Teddy Zigzag and those guys joined, and West wasn't into that at all. He didn't really like those guys. The whole thing had changed. It was he wanted things to be like the way they were, the old Guns N' Roses. They were starting to get popular. I mean, Guns N' Roses got really popular, but they started to change, adding personnel and all this stuff. West did not. I remember him coming back from the studio saying, "Man, I don't dig these guys, man. So and so and so and so." He says, And West, he called it straight out. He knew it was up. He knew that who was Guns N' Roses material and who wasn't. And I remember he wasn't very happy with some of the guys they'd brought in, but that wasn't his. I mean, it was his band, but it wasn't.
Sure. Interesting.
And yeah, Wes was real simple and very deep, and not combative at all. But at least not that I know of. What do you think, Raz?
Yeah, I think, non-combative, mellow. He was a mellow dude, man. But, he got his way with his talent. Not by, yelling and screaming, It's just he hung out with people that knew, how good he was, and he knew how good the people he was. And when he said something, people, at least gave him the benefit of the doubt long enough to do it his way and give it a try,
Yeah. Did you remember that thing? It was on our refrigerator. It was an English rag where he was at I think it was a Virgin songwriters party, something like this, and Wes was there, and there's a bunch of people there, artists, writers, whatever. Anyway, Boy George was there, and Boy George started bagging on AxlRose, and Wes jumped in and just laid into him, calling him every word in the book, and told me, Axl could sing better than him, and blah blah blah. And Boy George comes out from nowhere with the windmill, to beat up at West. He's come swinging with a windmill.
What?
And it made the cover of an English rag, but that was on a refrigerator, man. I used to laugh about that. West was 5'4". And he'd stand up. He was standing up for his buddies. Like, man, he just right in front of everybody just dressed the guy down. And so much that he came out of nowhere to be swinging.
See, I appreciate that. I'm 5'6", and I've definitely jumped into fight, with a friend of mine getting shit, and I'll throw a punch. I don't care if I'm 5'6". I don't mess with my friends. Don't mess with my friends or family.
That's exactly what he was like. He was defending his friends, and as far as AxlRose being insulted by Boy George, West took it personally, like he was insulted himself, and that's how he handled it. West is a pretty loyal guy. He was a loyal guy, man, very much so.
I gotta find that picture, man.
So do I.
So it's Boy George flailing away. Is Wes in the shot, or is it just Boy George flailing at him?
And I don't remember the picture, but I wish I did. Look, you know what? Look for it, man. It's got to be somewhere. It's an English. It's a popular
like
English.
88 or 89 or something like that.
Yeah. Maybe somewhere around there. Yes. Yeah, I'll find that. And, it was a Virgin. It was a Virgin. I think it was a Virgin. West was contracted with Virgin Writers Party or something like that. And yeah, Boy George, man, they got in a fight.
All right.
They got in a fight. West was pissed, man, because he just dressed him. I mean, just ripped him apart in front of everybody.
So wait, I guess he really did want to hurt Wes, right?
Yeah. Well,
do you really want to hurt me? I got it, Raz.
Right. He came in with the windmill treatment, with both hands swinging, forward.
Back then, we might describe it as like a girl, but we couldn't call it like a girl anymore because girls are boxers now.
Right.
Sure. No, now I'm just thinking of there's a clip from The Simpsons when Bart and Lisa were both playing hockey and they were trying to fight each other and whatever. They're going at each other with the windmill.
If you get hit, it's your own fault.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, no, I got you. See, I mean, it's so cool. I mean, this is why, Raz, this is your third time on. You have so many great stories. We find out new ones each time. And it seems going to be for you, James. I really appreciate you talking about, of course, yourself, your family, growing up, and just opening up about West, because I know, we can hear it in your voice now that it still hurts. So I really appreciate you not just taking the time, but just the content that you've shared with us. So just thank you. I appreciate it, and I do hope you come on again, whether it's talking more Outpatience, but I know you have a lot more stories to tell, and I'm eager to hear them.
We just scratched the surface. I'm sorry. I try and elaborate so much on each story. I try and tell them as descriptively as I can. But
no, you were great.
Wes was. He would defend his, he would defend and be loyal to his people, absolutely. But Wes was this very sweet and kind of a tranquil guy, but I mean, he was capable. I mean, he could stir it up too. I mean, seriously. But yeah, he could get mad. Absolutely, he could get mad. But he was a loyal guy,
Well, I get that sense from you, being loyal, sweet, and tranquil. So West, he and I we had an agreement that was almost, it was understood. We looked after each other, and I didn't go through all that. The crazy drug phase that he went through, and which was really where a lot of stuff happened. Man, I came in at the end and was trying to be, a kind of a new start for him, a clean and sober band, and to launch his record and his career, and get out there and stay busy. It's just, I mean, those guys, he and George had been through so many development deals that they just smoked up all the profits and everything. They're partners in crime and partners in writing, but this is one where, he could make it stick. We actually got something produced and an actual product that was marketed and sold, and it's out there. And well, I'm glad that it's out there. I mean, it sucks that no live shows happen, but who knows what you may be able to find in your vault. I know you told me off the air. I was like, do you have any pictures? And you're like, no, that went up in the house fire. I'm like, oh God. Well, I'm glad you weren't in the house fire, because it sounds like there's enough tragedy. You've had enough tragedy in your life,
Oh man, and the Ventura fire just got the rest of my stuff. I swear to God, about 4 or 5 months ago, there's a firestorm up there, and I had a bunch of stuff that I'd collected since my fire, and salvaged, my entire. This time it got everything. Fortunately, nobody died in that Ventura fire.
Sure.
But,
well,
it was a 150 when my house caught on fire in Pasadena. It was a 1 in 50. I wasn't home. I was lucky because I would have made it out. So I had to take that deal. My life or my things, and that house is a museum of my. It was a museum of my life. I had all my instruments, all.
I can't even imagine.
It's tragic. It was just devastating.
So maybe to properly bookend the conversation, because you started out by saying that you grew up in Pasadena, you wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Maybe you want to live somewhere where there aren't as many fires.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Really.
Like the Big Island or something?
Yeah, right there, right there.
Live on the water or something. Jeez. Well, I'm glad that you are okay.
There's
Thankfully.
smoke on the water, though.
Yeah, I've
true.
been lucky. I've almost had my head blown off. I mean, one car distance away, then the dude pulled the trigger. Man, he was aiming right at my head. I had to jump on him though. But anyway, I've been lucky. I've been hit by cars. I jumped up, bounced off the windshield, did a somersault, and landed on my feet as it went through me. I've been fortunate, very, very fortunate to escape being really seriously hurt and shot to death and all this thing. I've been very fortunate. Thank God.
Well, at the very least, I'm glad you're here to tell us these stories. That's very minuscule.
And
Survivor, man.
Remember, it could happen. What happened to me at my place could happen to anybody. It's faulty line. If to keep things unplugged that you're not using, man. Because if you have old wiring, this place I was in had really old wiring. It could happen to anybody. It really could. So I mean, it happened to me. I was just thank God I wasn't there. But I had to take the deal, man. All the things in my life, my instruments, everything, all up in smoke. Disintegrated or my life, and I have to take my life.
Oh, absolutely, of course.
The only good thing about it was I wasn't there. Hey Raz, I just want to say, man, I'm sorry I talked so much. I didn't mean to bogart all the time talking, man.
Oh no, dude, it's all about you, man. I was loving it, dude. I was like, actually, I loved hearing what you had to say, man. So no, not a problem at all.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, this what we just did today. We could do 5 more times and still, have plenty to talk about.
Absolutely.
There's some really good times.
I got so many Roger Daltrey questions for you.
Really?
I'm the hugest Who fan, man. I can't believe you guys played Naked Eye, man. I would have went. I love that song.
Yeah, I'm not playing with Roger now, but I mean, I did 5 years with him, and wow, I mean, and just like Mick Jagger, man, these guys are doing it, man. They are doing it still. Roger's, he has to go get an operation every couple of years on his throat, but
right.
Really?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a few. I know it was every few years, but I know a few years ago that he had something major happen. But I didn't know that it was consistent. That sucks.
Well, a couple of years ago, he almost died.
Yeah.
Viral meningitis, I think it was. He was. Last time I saw Roger, he's like, he's telling me about it. He said, then a piece fell over him. He felt peace, and through that whole process of almost dying, he should have died actually at his age.
Scary.
But he found peace, and like, okay, well, that's very good. It's I hope he has. The guy's had a long career, lots of tragedy. He's the real deal.
Well, you're the real deal, Jamie Hunting, Mr. Hunting.
When it comes time to playing the bass, and I'll that's what I love to do, man. That's what I love to do, and that's why we're all talking, just because I love to play the bass, and I always, keep an open mind about it. I don't shoot people down that aren't as experienced as I am. I welcome younger players, and we have to all work together. That's about musicianship.
Right on.
So. We help each other out, in other areas. And I've always said yes to a point. I'm willing to listen, and then, but that's the only reason I've, worked with so many people. Because you look around you, everything you see is a result of somebody saying yes.
Well, there it is. You have some good advice out there in addition to playing the bass. You have some great advice. No, absolutely. We'll do an entire sequence, just like the Police Academy movies. We'll do something like that with James Hunting and Raz.
6 degrees of Jamie Hunting.
Yeah, there you go. So how can people stay in touch with you? Or do you want them to stay in touch with you? Because if they have questions or, what you're doing now, I'm
easily trackable. I live in Pasadena. I do have Facebook, but I don't use it as a professional thing. I put all kinds of crap up there. It's like just trying to find a home for a pit bull the other day. Which I did. I did find a home for him.
Oh, very nice.
But I play locally around Los Angeles. I record. I'm working with the blues artists. I'm way too quiet about what I'm doing. I just go about and do it. I don't really look at it as. I need somebody to do that for me because I just focus on just getting to work on time if I'm playing and you guys know I'm having trouble with time.
Yeah, it's okay.
Imagine that. I'm in the time business, and I'm always pushing time. But I mean,
right on. Well, whenever you have something to share, I mean, in addition to like when we do talk again, if you ever want to talk about upcoming gigs or anything to promote, if you want to talk about a certain young player you're mentoring, you can always reach out to me. And this was just a pleasure. I'm glad that we finally got to do this, James.
Thank you very much. I played with a lot of New Yorkers over the years, and people actually thought I was from New York, or actually think I'm from New York. I don't know why.
You're too nice to be from New York. Everyone here is a jerk.
But I don't have to speak. They're just talking about the way I dress, and I don't really get that. But I mean, to me, Earl Slick is New York. We were in a band together once, and Joan Jett, that's New York.
Yes, Joan Jett, sure.
You know what I mean?
And I always think of like Twisted Sister and the Ramones.
Them too, yeah, of course.
Like dark music.
And the Ramones, yeah, right. Yeah. Joe Franco, I remember Joe Franco. I did a record with Joe Franco. He was pretty cool. The Twisted Sister, I think, drummer. And this is John Wade. I remember seeing John Wade out in New York City a lot.
Oh, great, yeah, John Wade.
Oh, that's so cool. So, now we're just getting all these like bullet points of just a million different stories that Jamie has. It's good. We're gonna be here for a day if we continue. So, James. Yeah, this was.
Hey, you guys, it was good rapping with you, man. And we can do it again at any time.
We will. 100%.
Okay, hey, nice talking with you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, later, man.
Look me up on Facebook if anybody wants to get a hold of me. I'll even leave my phone number. I'm trackable.
Wow, very trackable. All right. Well,
yeah,
thanks, James. We will absolutely talk soon. All right, buddy.
Okay, man.
Take care.
Okay, goodbye, man. Later.
Bye, man.
Bye.
Take care, Raz. Bye.
Up next, recorded July of 2018, Gregg Buchwalter.
Gregg Buchwalter is on the phone with us today. Where are you calling from?
I'm in Van Nuys, California.
Wow, that's where it all roots back from. Nikki Sixx sings about that all the time. It seems to be the hub. I got to get my ass out there.
It used to be the mecca for a lot of musicians back in the 80s. Some of the 90s.
All I can do, and that's kind of what this podcast is kind of just like recreate the experiences you guys have had. I mean, I'm younger than you, but I grew up learning about the New York scene, New York City scene, CBGBs.
Yeah,
but I grew up still like kind of, I don't know, this really like, this imagination of like what is it like on the Sunset Strip in California with Guns N' Roses, of course, Motley Crue, Poison. There's something about that.
It used to be a scene, and it was like these bands were all competing to get attention, and they would flyer everything. You come out of a club, and there'd be flyers for a band playing at the Whiskey or the Palladium, whatever, and it was a lot more like personal back then. Guys would try to one-up each other and try to put on a better show than the other one, and there was a lot of competition.
Yeah, now it's all like a Facebook invite. It's the person. It's just the personal touch is kind of lost, or the personal touch is connecting on Snapchat, and you feel like you're connecting with the person because it's a live video,
right?
But it's awkward. But I want to get into all of that with you, Gregg. And if you don't know his name, I don't think you would be offended, Mr. Mr. Buchwalter. You're like, if people don't know who you are.
Oh, I'm not offended.
Yeah, because you have that down-to-earth personality. Because it had to be brought to my attention, and I have to thank a past guest of ours and a former bandmate of yours, James or Jamie Hunting. That's a kind of an inside joke with that episode. Because I'm like, you're James Hunting on the Outpatience record with West Arkeen, but your Facebook is Jamie. So like, what do I call you? But for you, I guess it's Gregg with 2 G's.
Right.
That's
Gregg.
Yeah. so we know you're serious. So you played keyboards on that kind of lost record, that awesome record from the Outpatients with West Arkeen. So that's why you join us today, and we're gonna get into who you are as a person, the making of the record, and kind of the fallout. Because, like I kind of said before, when we spoke to off the phone, some of the stuff you said to me about that record and things that happened after is super heavy. So I'm like, you know what? Let's this one just be a 1-on-1. And in the future, to everyone listening, I definitely want to continue to have you guys involved in episodes. And, well, Gregg, they're going to be involved in something that you're going to be involved with right now. I kind of have, like, sound bites and stuff, because I want this, again, to be kind of like a radio show, right? So
yeah, very cool.
I try to be creative like this one.
Oh, Axel.
I mean, of course, axlrose, and I found that from Friday the 13th, Part 4.
Oh,
there was a character that just, named Axel who got horrendously murdered.
Wow.
Or this one, I forgot to use this one last time, because sometimes you bring up Sebastian Bach, because he is involved in the GNR universe. I don't know if you remember that TV show that he was on with Ted Nugent, and what the fuck was it called? It was like Supergroup on VH1, but he wanted to name his band
Savage Animal.
Savage Animal. That was the name of his band. Not as cool as the Outpatients, and you guys spelt it weird. I don't think I asked.
You know why it was spelled weird?
Yeah, no. Tell.
Some other band in Iowa or something had copywritten that name or something like that, spelled that way with the T. And so we decided, we'll just spell it this way, which is actually kind of deeper,
I know, it is. I like the way it's spelled has a deeper meaning, so I do like it. That's awesome. But you're going to be a part of, and we're going to get to your story, all of that. But first, my listeners know the deal. I told you a little before, I warned you a little before, my news segment. So to be creative, Guns N' Roses have a song called Shotgun Blues. So I call this one News. Yeah, very intense. I know you're very mellow right now, but some of my sound bites are a little crazy. I don't know. It adds something instead of just just a conversation between two dudes.
Yep.
I want to spice it up a little bit.
Put our pants on one leg at a time.
Right on. Oh. So, Shotgun News brought to you by our friends, or whether you like it or not, at alternativenation.net. First one, it came out, I interviewed Todd Kearns several episodes ago, who's from Slash with Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators. At the time, he's like, he believed that they would make new music, whether he really knew at the time or couldn't really let the cat out of the bag. We've learned since then, yes, new record, new album. They're going to be here, at least for me, in New York in the fall, and that's when the new record's coming out in September. But their single, I thought it was released, their single Driving Rain, but I guess it kind of leaked because it's on some Spotify outlets in certain countries. But this was told to me through a source that it was not meant to be released. They're trying to shut it down everywhere, and it's supposed to be available on Wednesday. So it's interesting that, then how would Spotify get it? But the source I have is pretty credible and said they asked Slash himself. But this ties into something, Gregg, and if you have an opinion on, because part of Shotgun News, I kind of always reflect on the last episode I do, because you never know. Just like when you would play gigs, you never know who's going to see you for the first time. You never know who's going to hear you for the first time. So I get that a lot. Like, hey, I just found you. I have to go back and listen to episodes. So it's flattering. But last episode, yes, we can interview musicians and people who partied and are rock stars like you, Gregg Buchwalter. But in this GNR universe that I've thought I knew before doing this podcast, it just goes into this dark web, lies, deceit. It's some of it's like storyboard, it's like soap opera story. Yeah, it's just crazy.
Like someone should write a friggin' movie about this shit.
I know. No, there isn't. They do make movies about. I can just start at the top, the Social Network, about Facebook, but all the behind the scenes stuff. You think all you're doing is watching a movie about a computer program, or an application or whatever. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that goes on between my podcast, or there are online forums. That's how I found out or was given the idea rather to interview Jamie, and then which would lead to this interview, which would be through an online Guns N' Roses forum. So I looked at these places for news and see the pulse of the people. But the last episode I did was, and maybe you could think about this in regards to the Outpatients, right? So I know you guys had trouble releasing the record for a variety of reasons. But you wanted to get the music out there. So with Guns N' Roses, I mean, I'm sure
Axl refused to sign his release.
He refused to sign West's release?
Yeah. When he came in and sang, he was supposed to sign a release saying we could use his performance, on the record.
Right.
And he never signed it. And he threatened to sue us if we released it before his next record came out in the U.S. So we were kind of like going, what? So
that album, though, that came out in the late 90s, because it came out in Japan first. And when did it, this important sidebar, when did it officially come out in the U.S.? Because Guns N' Roses didn't release anything until Chinese Democracy, right? That was the Chinese era? So you could have... Well, that means I'm sure he didn't think it would take that long to do that, but that's...
No, it was a mess. And we were just about getting ready to... First, our original singer died.
Yeah.
Making the album. In the middle of making the record, I find him dead in the bathroom, and West is, unconscious on the floor in the hallway. And I pick West up, I put him on the couch, I say, "Where's George, man?" George Bass was our original singer, and he was a really sweet guy from Atlanta, Georgia. He sang his ass off. And I was yelling at George. I kicked in the bathroom door because it was locked, and he was on the floor, and I'm giving him CPR and screaming at him and shit, and it was just a mess. So after the police and paramedics and ambulance took George's body, I took Wes to a rehab, and they wouldn't allow him in because he was too fucked up. They wanted him medically cleared from an emergency room first. So I had to carry him back to the car, put him in the car, drive to a hospital, carry him into an emergency room, wait around. Finally, at about 4 a.m, he gets out. I get him checked into this rehab. And I just started dating a girl that weekend,
Mm-hmm.
And she asked, how was the recording? She thought I was in the studio all day. I said, well, didn't quite go as planned, And check this out. That morning, the record guys from the Japanese label were on a plane to meet us and take photos in the studio.
I can't even imagine. I mean, obviously, a death at any point in time is horrible, but the timing of everything, it's like, what do you... Because the sudden death, I mean, I've been there. It's like, what do you do?
Right.
But when you have... There's so many different legs to it where it says, aside from the emotional, which is just a main part of it, but just the album release and just all the different people, the business dealings you have to deal with. I can't even imagine.
It was insane. And then I co-wrote one of the tunes on it, and I had a fight with West about being listed as a co-writer. And it was just, when he was clean, he was really cool. But when he was using, all bets were off,
That's usually the case, isn't it? And I want to go quickly back to this because we're getting to your heavy stuff right away. But I want everything, of course, to come out organically.
Sure.
But our last episode, we were talking about our Guns N' Roses songs that leak out and certain stories that come out with that. But here's the thing, though. That's with GNR, and he's alive and healthy, and people want it and demand it. But with West, it's like the songs that he can't make anymore. So it's like, I wish they were out there. They're hard to find. I was telling Jamie, they're hard to find. I was telling you, they're hard to find on YouTube. And it's, sometimes leaked material is a good thing.
I guess. I don't
or would that hurt you? Because you said you said that you, and Jamie said the same thing, that you guys really haven't seen any residuals from this record. And people want it. People want it.
Yeah, and check this out. When I used to be in a band with Rod Jackson. He sang for Slash's Snake Pit.
Sure, he was a former guest. What a wonderful guy he was.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
Sings his butt off, man. Anyway, he calls me up after coming back to the U.S. from touring and goes, "Hey, Greg, you guys are huge over in Japan and Asia and Europe and stuff." I'm like, "What are you talking about? There is no band. West died and our singer died." And he's like, "Oh, those posters of you guys everywhere, and you guys are in all these magazines, right? And you're all over the internet." And at the time, I didn't have a computer. I wasn't really into it. I just never bothered with it. I said, how can I be on the internet? I don't even have a computer. That's how ignorant I was. Right?
Sure. I mean, we said, late 90s and the internet was still trying to figure out, like, what it is, you know?
Yeah, and then Napster came out, and it just ruined everything, right?
Yeah, man.
Completely. And the internet, I think, really destroyed a lot of businesses, man, really badly. But anyway, he tells me that, so I go out to a Radio Shack, I buy a laptop, I get online, I'm like, holy crap, you know. I go to Amazon to order the record because I don't have a copy because everything I had burned up in a fire prior, you know.
Wait, was that the same fire with Jamie? Because his stuff burned up in a fire.
No.
So you both had, because I asked him like what he may have in the past. He was telling me about a house fire. So you had a house fire too?
No, I was driving back from Boston with all my equipment in my van, and my engine caught fire, and I was only able to save my Gibson acoustic that was on the top. My Hammond B3 burned, my piano, my Leslie speakers, my guitars, my wardrobe, everything.
What were you driving?
A Ford Econoline E150.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you're okay, but were you okay at the time, like physically?
Oh, physically, yeah, but I was, what do you do?
You lost your life.
Oh, man, I, buried 2 band members from the Outpatients, got divorced, went to Boston to supposedly make a record with a friend who said I could stay with him, but he neglected to tell me he was living in his mom's basement and I could only stay for a couple days. And I'm going, what? So meanwhile, it's cold and miserable there, and I'm sleeping in my van with all my gear, and I can't find any old friends that have room for me, right? I'm like, Jesus, if I'm going to be homeless in my own hometown, I might as well go back to L.A. where at least it's warm, I can pick oranges off someone's tree or something. So as I'm driving all the way back with everything, I get to Needles, California, which is a couple hours outside of L.A., and smoke starts pouring in under my feet, and I pull over, open the hood, and there's blue flames shooting out of the engine. So I open the back of the van and grab the guitar, and all of a sudden the police were there, and they're pulling me. I'm trying to pull my stuff out of the van, and they're pulling me at the same time. It was just a scene, right? So I'm like, okay, God, you got my fucking attention now. You've taken my bandmates. You took my wife away from me. Now you took everything I own away from me. And I had no insurance on the vehicle or my gear or anything at the time. I was really broke,
Wow.
And I got this little voice in my head that said, I need you to fix the organs in my churches. I said, oh, okay. I'm not going to argue with you.
Okay.
You got my attention for sure. So that's what I've been doing, and writing songs. I did have a cool band put together, but the drummer bailed because he's got like 2 wives. And
oh, that's nice.
Well, he's got like alimony up the wazoo. He has to work his ass off to pay child support and stuff. And he doesn't have time to commit to a band. And the other guys that I'd hired for the record, they're all older guys, and I don't have any backing, so I can't pay them, So I'm like, shit, what do I do? It's like, just do what I do, fix organs, play, write, record. I have an analog recording studio, believe it or not. I still record on tape. I don't know how to use computers for recording. It makes no sense to me. It's like, what are you looking at?
It's changing the game for sure, but there are a lot of bands who still want to keep analog. So, I mean...
it's funny. I've had a few clients come in, and they're all about getting that organic sound, but none of them can play.
Right.
They can't play through a song without messing up somewhere. And it's like, wow, man, you guys aren't ready to record yet.
So they have to fix it later in production.
Yeah. The running joke was, what the big couch was for behind the big mixing console at the big studios? Mm-hmm. For the band to sit in while the real musicians played their shit. Seriously, that's how it was a lot of times.
You know what? And I understand that too a little bit in my world, comparing it doing a podcast versus live radio.
Right.
And I admit sometimes I'll go off on a tangent. And sometimes it's like with playing, keyboards or a guitar, you just have to riff it and see where it goes. But I'll go back and listen and be like, I just spent 30 seconds talking about shit, and I take it out. I'm like, but should I do that? Is that as organic as possible? You know, I never changed the conversation, but I fix things here and there. But of course, it's different than actually playing a tune. Right. It's you know, it's still pleasing to the ear. You should get through a song. So, so
back in the day, there was records. You know, there was records, and the record looks. You know, you'd go into a record store. And you'd see a cool-looking record, and you go, "Wow, I wonder what that sounds like." Just based on the cover, you know.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
And it was like a way different thing than it is now. And you know, if you liked the record, the record was a calling card to sell tickets to the concert. And labels would invest money and develop an act. You know, give them a 3-record deal. 1 record to introduce them to the group people, 2nd record to reintroduce them to the people, and the 3rd one would hopefully be the one that puts them over the top. That's how it used to be with Springsteen and Fleetwood Mac and Dire Straits and all these old bands back in the day. You know what I mean? The labels would take the time to develop them and let them go out and tour for a while, and you know.
Oh, no, now it's instant, and it's funny you mentioned. I was just
they don't even want to talk to you if you don't have 10 zillion followers on the internet. And I'm like, who the hell are these people? You know.
That's a fair point.
You know, it's really weird. I get fan mail sometimes on the internet from people asking me about the Outpatients and what it was like working with Axl and Slash and Duff and Izzy and all these guys. I'm like, wow. I can't believe people even know about this. You know?
Well, that's the good thing of the internet, that you know, your band and some of your projects could have been lost over time, but these things can still have life in them because of the internet, and you know, because of this podcast is possible because of the internet. So it does, of course, it has its positives and negatives, much, you know, depending upon how you use it. Yeah.
I went to order it on Amazon and it was sold out.
Right.
I go to order it again like a few days later, sold out again. I go to order it like a month or 2 later, sold out again. I'm like, and then I call the old attorneys and I'm like, well, what's going on? This thing is selling. Where's the dough? You know? And they're like, oh, there's no money. It's not selling. No, you know, forget about it. You know, and these attorneys ended up like retitling songs and using them in movies without any telling in people and all kinds of heinous shit, you know. It goes way deep. I've been through 5 attorneys, and to do an international, you know, look under a rock investigation costs way too much money, and it's like not worth it. I've reached out to Duff about helping me trying to figure this shit out, and he didn't, you know, he doesn't give a shit. It's just weird.
Oh, do you have a relationship with him still?
Not really, no. We recorded a couple tunes at his house, and during that time, Axl was on his fury, firing everybody and sending like 20-page faxes to Duff going, you know, F you, I own everything, you're out of the band, you know, that kind of shit. And so he was dealing with that crap. And I don't know, it was just weird, you know, it was just a weird time.
A weird environment?
Yeah, like it wasn't comfortable and pleasant. Everyone was uptight and tense, and you know, it wasn't a cool vibe.
Well, I want to get, because that's obviously, with this being a Guns N' Roses podcast, kind of the intriguing part, the making of that record, and how, you know, that was post breakup.
Yeah.
But I want to find out more about you there. So let's leave a little cliffhanger for a moment.
Sure.
You know, because I want to know. I mean, you're mentioning all these bad things that are happening to you.
Yeah,
I want to know where it's
was like cursed or something.
I know,
but anyone involved or remotely involved with Guns N' Roses.
But I want to know, like, when you were, because I think you said you grew up in Massachusetts. Were you like a little kid getting sand kicked in your face? Like, what was little Gregg like? Like, were you always kind of you know, have a black cloud over your head, like what?
Yeah.
Charlie Brown.
Yeah. In fact, my mom said she knew there was something wrong with me when I was a baby because I never smiled for baby pictures. Yeah, man, I was like wicked depressed from day one. You know, fucking terrible. I don't know why. I fight it. I take meds and I fight it daily, but I can still function. But sometimes moments seem like forever.
I hear you.
And then years go by in like the blink of an eye, and you're like, Jesus Christ, my sense of time is so strange now, you know?
I couldn't agree anymore. I mean, I just took my my 40 milligrams of Cymbalta before we started talking. So
Yeah, I hear you.
yes, no, I'm with you. So then, what kind of? I mean, in addition to being maybe a droopy dog as a kid, like what kind of kid were you? I mean, were you were you a musical kid? Were you a sports kid? Like, how did you get into this kind of music and play keyboards? You know, how do you get into that?
Well, my mom had a piano, right? Mm-hmm. And she thought it would be cool if my younger brother, and I would take piano lessons. We started off at, I think I was 5 and he was 3. I stuck with it. He quit. And then I sat in with Clarence Gatemouth Brown, an old Zydeco blues Cajun guy, at a club in Boston, and he asked me to finish the rest of the dates of his tour on the East Coast. And I went home and asked my parents. They said, "No, you can't. You're still in high school." And I was like, "Damn it! I just want to play music, you know." That's what I want to do. So I ran away from home, hitchhiked to Florida, you know.
To Florida?
And
You hitchhiked from Massachusetts to Florida?
Yeah.
Why Florida?
I was in love with this girl there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was young and stupid. You know, I would, drag my nuts through 100 yards of broken glass just to hear her pee in a tin can over the phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. I haven't heard that visual before, but I still know what you mean. I may use that.
Well, check this out.
Uh-huh.
This is funny because she ended up getting married to some other guy, and I didn't talk to her for a zillion years. She ran off to Israel with a rabbi after her husband died of cancer.
Oh.
What?
Interesting.
Really weird. Anyway.
On behalf of my chosen people, that's a little interesting.
Yeah.
But you're part of the tribe too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, my father is a Holocaust survivor from Romania.
Wow.
And he was very strict with me. And I did sports, and I was smart in school, but I also got high and played music, and so I didn't really fit in with anybody.
Okay.
But people, the people that I got high with didn't like me because I was in all advanced brain classes. The people in the brain classes didn't like me because I got high. The musicians didn't like me because I played basketball. The basketball guys didn't like me because I got higher than them.
You couldn't win.
Yeah, and then the musicians, it was like all this marching band kind of, orchestral. I was playing French horn and piano, but it wasn't for me. I wanted to play rock and roll, And
who were you listening to at the time, and what was your first concert?
Oh, man. What blew my mind, I think, was when I was 13. I had been stoned for like the second or third time on weed. And a friend of mine's older brother was a scary good bass player. Studied with Miroslav V2s, and he played with Weather Report and Miles Davis. And he was like, the shit, right? Mm-hmm. And he goes, "Hey, Greg, you play piano?" Because they had a piano and I would play on it sometimes. He goes, "You got to hear this." Brings me into his room with his wicked old school stereo, puts this record on, and this music comes on. I'm like, I know that music. That's Creature Double Feature, right? It was a TV cartoon on Saturday mornings in Boston, Creature Double Feature. And they would show old Godzilla movies and Rodan and
oh, nice,
all those weird Japanese monster movies that are really funny. So they used that music, and that music was Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Brain Salad Surgery, Toccata.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
And I was like, wow, what are those sounds? He's telling me, that's a synthesizer. And what's that? Oh, that's a Hammond organ. I'm like, wow. So I go home that day, and I tell him, "Dad, I want to get a synthesizer." He's like, "Well, what?" You never heard of such a thing. They just started coming out with them. And so he goes, "Well, you better get a job." So I got a job washing dishes at this restaurant all summer to buy my first synthesizer, which was a Yamaha CS50 4-voice thing. It was really cool, but it took me a long time to learn how to play. You know, I was used to playing piano. I wasn't used to playing synthesizers and organs and stuff. It's a way different feel.
I can imagine.
So that's kind of how it happened. And a drummer that had auditioned for a band I was in Boston wasn't good enough for our band, according to the bass player. So we didn't take him. The guy calls me up 2 weeks later, says, "Hey man, I moved to LA. I got a gig with Paula Abdul, making $3,500 a week." I'm like, no kidding. Good for you, man. That's awesome. I tell the bass player, Paul, that. I go, "Hey man, you remember Corey, the guy we didn't think was good enough? Yeah, well, he's playing with Paula Abdul now, making $3,500 a week. We should move to LA." And they were all didn't want to move, didn't want to leave home, you know. Mm-hmm. So I was like, fuck this, I'm out of here, you know.
Your commitment level was different.
Well, yeah, I mean, I packed up my shit and drove cross country with my gear to play rock and roll, you know.
At least this time you drove instead of hitchhiked.
Yeah, I know. But by the time I got here, my poor van at the time was burning yellow and orange and purple black smoke. You know, it was like burning washer fluid and coolant, and you know, it's just weird.
Wow. Then,
yeah.
So when you moved to LA, how long did it take for you to get kind of like a, you know, a break, or a breakthrough gig and say, hey, you know what, I can kind of set up shop here and make this work for me?
Yeah. Well, the first gig I got was actually selling cowboy boots in a cowboy boot store.
Sure. Okay.
Right. And I was just doing that. And I was like, there was a magazine called Music Connection that used to be distributed everywhere, and there was in the back there was these classifieds, music classifieds. Hey, this band's looking for a, you know, electric spoon player. This guy needs a guitar player. We're looking for a bass player for our band. We do, you know, go-go's or whatever the F it is, you know. So I'm like, okay. So I'm calling these ads. First thing they ask me, "What do you look like, dude?"
What do you look like?
Yeah. I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, what do you look like, dude?" I'm like, "What the fuck do you care? You know, you want to fuck me and don't want to play rock and roll with me? You know?" I said, "Look, I'm 6'3", I weigh 200 pounds, I have long black curly hair. You know, what do you look like? What the fuck? What kind of question is that? You know?" I thought it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. And unfortunately, in LA at that time, MTV was happening, and everyone wanted band members that had a look, right? And poor West, a brilliant guitar player, was really thrilled that his friends in Guns N' Roses were playing some of his tunes and writing with him and shit. And they wouldn't let him in the band because he was too short and fat. Didn't look right, you know?
You know,
like, wow. And
you told me that off the air, and like, did he say that? Was it a perception you had? Did you hear someone else say that? Because
his girlfriend told me. She said, you know, he's asked him a bunch of times to join the band, but they told him, "No, you're too short and fat, man. I'm sorry, you don't look right."
I can't.
Isn't that sick?
That I mean, everyone's different now. They're different in their 50s than they were in their late teens, early 20s, whatever.
Right.
So I try not to judge like, oh, what a dick thing to say and get mad because we're not in that moment. But that is, if that's how they said it or whoever it was, that's obviously a really dick thing to say, especially for somebody who's suffering demons. And I grew up thinking. You know, I
guitar player, man. He was really good. In fact,
well, that's how I found out. Well, obviously through Guns N' Roses and Appetite for Destruction, just celebrating. I think it's 31st anniversary.
Right. But, like number one again or something.
Yeah, I mean, what the box said, you know, it went top 10 again. But with growing up, obviously years ago before this podcast and all, even close to that, but like, who is this Arkeen guy listed on Appetite that wrote these songs? So I would look it up, like, oh wow, It's So Easy, wrote Bad Obsession on the Illusions in the Garden, and I'm like, who is this guy? And I watched YouTube videos, and I'd see the love and affection that you would see Axl have for West. I think that there was that one video when they're playing "You're Crazy" or something.
Yeah.
But when he told me that, I'm like, I kind of don't want it to be true. I don't want to believe that.
No, it's absolutely true, man. He was heartbroken because they wouldn't let him in the band. He really loved the band and thought that, he really wanted to be in the band.
It reminds me of how it comes off that Steven Adler feels now, that he feels like he's not, worthy enough or something.
It's really sad because you know what? When they fired him, he was the one that was getting clean. He was the one that was trying to get his shit together because they were starting to pop, and the other guys were like making fun of him and teasing him and shit.
Were you around GNR back in the day, or was your first encounter with West and the Outpatients? Where did your worlds collide with our world?
I first saw GNR in Boston opening for Aerosmith. They were opening for Aerosmith when they first came out, and they came out, did their thing, and Axl swearing, "You motherfuckers," and all this kind of stuff. And I'm going, "Who is this guy?" Like, what's up with this? And then they did a show, and I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. Then Aerosmith came out and gave them a lesson. You know what I mean? Like totally outclassed them in every respected area, from performance to songs to hooks to grooves to lighting to everything. It was just like, okay, these guys are the new guys, but here's the real guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
And they made GNR look like amateurs. But their song, "Welcome to the Jungle," was on the radio, and I'm like, damn, that's a badass song, right? Mm-hmm. And it was hitting on the radio all the time, and I'm going, what a great fucking tune. Yeah, I'll go see these guys. They're opening for Aerosmith. No shit, this ought to be fun. And I was expecting the record off the stage. You know what I mean? And they didn't sound that good. And I'm like, fuck.
You hear that a lot about GNR back in the day, and I mean, I was not fortunate enough to. I mean, I was only born in '83, but for people who have seen them versus, well, I gotta say the late. It was a quote from the late and great Vinnie Paul, where he grew up watching GNR, and he had seen them recently. I think it was something an interview in 2016 that he's like, Axl has never sounded better. Like back in the day, they were kind of sloppy and they were sloppy. They were fucked up. They were missing shit. But it's cool. They were just starting out. Now they're huge, man, biggest rock band in the world. But I mean, Aerosmith really kicked their ass like really hard. You know what I mean? Like I was like, whoa! I was blown away. Did you get to encounter? Because you were living there. I mean, obviously Aerosmith from Boston, and they were on a different elevation at the time. But with Guns, were they still? Despite having a song on the radio, were you kind of in the same circles as they were, or were they already surpassed? Had they already surpassed that? They were
breaking. They were becoming worldwide.
Yeah, so it wasn't like you were at the same when you moved there that they were still playing.
No, they had already been huge. I moved out here in '91.
Okay.
And at that time,
that was the Illusion era time. So yeah.
Yeah, and I got a gig playing with this Canadian singer named Sass Jordan, who is signed to Aquarius in Canada or some shit like that. And we did a bunch of touring. We played all over North America. We toured with Bryan Adams, Steve Miller, Joe Cocker, the Archangels, Richard Marx, a whole bunch of people. And when I came off that tour, that's when I met West.
Okay.
Because I had turned down opportunities to play with other artists, and I'm like, you know what? I don't really like living on a bus, playing my ass off every night and watching someone else get rich. I'm a creative entity myself. Why can't I co-write or be part of something creatively instead of just being a hired dog,
Yeah.
Because I'm very, I like to write songs and shit. So anyway, I turned down, I don't even want to mention it. It's stupid.
All right, you don't have to.
Yeah. Big mistakes. I'll tell you, I turned down the Wallflowers.
Okay.
I heard the demo and it sucked. The only reason that record happened is because they ended up spending over $800,000 on songwriters to make that record. No shit.
To make one headlight, to make that song?
Yeah.
Gee, I mean, that's the one song. So, I mean,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that the residuals of whatever you might have gotten from that would be nice. But, I mean, they have that.
The stuff I heard, I didn't hear a song. I was listening to the demo, and they'd tell me, oh, it's Dylan's kid, and I'm thinking, wow, he ought to be a charming little fellow, right?
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, fuck that. I got a call from Christina Aguilera's manager to play with her. I said, no, I just came off the road with a diva bitch. I do not want to play for another diva bitch ever again,
Sure.
So I turned her down. I got a call to play with Dream Theater.
Oh, wow, okay.
Even though I can play it, it doesn't excite me,
The prog rock kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's like, I like shit that makes you sing and dance and want to fuck,
Right on. Yeah.
I want to have a good time. I want to, feel something. If a song doesn't make you feel something, it's not a good song. It should make you either want to drive fast, cry, reminisce, whatever. You know what I mean? If it doesn't give you any sort of feeling that incite your foot tapping or your lips humming or whatever, it's not any good. I ended up working for Ray Charles, man, for about 6 years before.
Wow.
And I have his old tape machine, multi-track tape machine. That's what I record on, 2-inch tape. It's a 24-track machine with 16-track heads. And I heard an interview with Joe Walsh years ago, and he said on Rockline, man, if you can't make a good record on 16 tracks, you shouldn't be making records. Because the DJ was asking him what he thought about, all this 48-track and 64-track digital and unlimited tracks on computers and all this stuff. And he's like, man, that's what he said, and I agree.
Yeah, it goes back to what you were saying before about, like, can you play live as opposed to you need to record and fix things later in Pro Tools or whatever, same thing. But
all my favorite records did not have Pro Tools on them at all. They were all done on tape, and the guys actually played and sang and performed.
No, of course not. And this ties into things, because I want to ask you about it, is Ray Charles. I mean, he didn't need all those tracks, and I still listen to it.
Yeah.
It's funny because on my Spotify, I mean, it's funny that we're talking about it now. I just listened to Dire Straits, because we just mentioned them before,
right,
and Ray Charles. They're in my regular rotation, and you don't need all those tracks. So I got to ask, how is it working with such a legend? I mean, I can't even.
Oh,
I
man,
can't even fathom.
I was blessed. I'll tell you, I was blessed. After I, was fixing organs for churches, I got a call one day from him, saying, hey, I heard you're good with organs. Yeah, well, come on down. Okay. I was nervous as hell. I go to the studio. It's on Washington Boulevard in L.A., kind of the hood. Not really the hood, but on the edges of the hood. And I go in, and he wasn't there. And I go into the room where the organ is, and I turn it on, and I'm playing it, and it's got all kinds of issues, man, like missing tones and just a mess. So I'm working on it. I'm restoring all these dead tones. I'm fixing the shit out of it. Finally, after about 4 hours, I said, okay, it's ready. Ray comes in. He says, play it. So I start playing. He goes, ooh, yeah, that sounds better than the day I bought it back in 1959. And his engineer pointed at me and gave me the thumbs up, and ever since then I was his keyboard tech. And I was like, wow, he liked it, thank God. So I ended up doing a lot of work with Ray, and Ray doesn't look at a computer screen.
Well, obviously.
He doesn't see if the needle's in the red or not.
Right. It's a feel.
Does it sound good?
Right.
Does it effing sound good? One time this rapper came in. It was pretty funny. This young kid, he goes, hey, Mr. Charles, I got a song I want to show you. He's like, okay, sing it. He goes, well, I got to have my beats, yo, and it's a rap, and I got to rap to the beat. And Ray goes, son, if you can't sing it, it ain't a song. Why don't you go on home and think about that, boy?
Amazing.
Yeah.
That is so true.
Yeah. If you can't sing it, it ain't a song.
Thank you, Ray Charles, for that. I mean, it's just, yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you can have talent and do some of these things and put out, music for whatever you want to call it. But no, there's this lost art of making the music,
making records, the old school. And even some of the great ones were done really quickly, like in a week. Like Led Zeppelin 1 and 2 were done in like a week or 2 weeks. They didn't spend 3 years making it. They just went in and recorded some songs and just mixed it, and boom, here you go. You like it or don't you?
You're right. So then we got to get into this. All ties in together, the fluidity of the conversation.
Yeah.
And and I'll give this fan credit for asking the question, even though it's kind of the big pivot. This is from Tintin from Mexico. Forgive me, I always mispronounce his name, but he owns Slash's fan page out of Mexico and does so many likes. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
And I appreciate, because sometimes he'll translate some of my interviews into Spanish, which is just... That's so cool. It means a lot to do that. But he wants to know, since we're talking about recording, then how was the recording process of Anxious Disease? Because we've mentioned so many different things
tape.
Already.
It was on tape.
Mm-hmm.
Those, they went to a couple studios that had tape machines, and it was tape, man. They didn't need a computer to do anything. Any of those really cool audio effects are done with tape machines and outboard effects, like physical equipment, not some plug-in. You know what I mean? This is what I find fascinating, is the new recording gear all emulates the hard gear that I have. And everyone goes, oh, you need to get this, you need to get Pro Tools. I'm like, what for? I have everything I need to make a record here. This is how it was done since I was a kid. And all my, Kansas, ZZ Top, the Beatles, the Stones, it was all on tape. In fact, the last Stones record that was done for Virgin was rejected because all the guys, did the file sharing thing, where they're all in different parts of the world, and they're sending, here's the song in a file,
right?
And the other guy puts his part on, sends it to the other guy to put his part on, and by the time it was all done, the guy that owns Virgin said, "What the fuck is this? I didn't pay for this. This isn't a Rolling Stones record. Go back into a studio with tape machines and do it right. I didn't pay for this. I paid for a Rolling Stones record. I'm not putting this out." And so they wasted all their time jerking off on computers, only to be told to go back into a real studio and cut it on tape.
But since it was, all on tape, and the manipulation, you couldn't take advantage of it like you could with Pro Tools, any sort of editing software, then... with the people who were on the Outpatience record, like Adler and Slash and Axl and Duff, how did that come about? Did they all come in and tape their parts separately with West and you guys?
They would play live. They would play live, all of them. They would play live. And then, if someone messed up here, they would go in and overdub, go and redo their part if they messed up or whatever.
Okay.
That kind of thing. And then once you have your basics is basically your rhythm tracks, your basic rhythm tracks, the drums, bass, rhythm, guitar, basics. Then you start adding the vocals, the leads, the percussion, the, different things. And that's how records were made, back then. That's, you played live. You had to play it. So
you were, so then this was your first time meeting and obviously recording with Steven and Izzy. Like, what was that like, meeting these people for the first time?
I was blown away.
Yeah?
Because I was blown away because at the time, Axl was firing everybody and they all hated each other.
Yeah, so how did that happen? And I think Jamie just said they did the right thing by West because of all the things he did for them.
Right.
That's why Axl and Slash, even though they didn't record specifically together, they were still on the same track. So was
correct. We pulled.
Okay.
We put a piece of tape over the track that was Slash, and pulled his fader down so that when Axl would come to sing, he had no idea that Slash was even on it, and vice versa. If Slash came back in to redo it or whatever, Axl's voice would be taken out of the mix and his name covered up with tape, and so they couldn't even know they were on the same track. It would have been bedlam,
So Was that the plan, that they're not going to know they're on the same track until I release this record?
Correct.
What was the impetus behind him doing that? Because obviously there's some sort of...
Because he thought they would never get back. West thought they'd never get back together again, and figured I'll have the last recording of all the original guys, on the same record. That was his thinking.
So he thought that was it. Like he's...
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he thought they would be done. Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Then what was it like meeting, like any specific conversation or...
Izzy was great, man.
Yeah.
He was so cool. The other guys, I've met Slash and Duff a couple times. They're okay. For some reason they're not warm and fuzzy with me. They're just like, hey, what's up? They don't know me from Adam, so I guess, what the fuck would they give a shit? You know what I mean?
Okay, sure.
That's kind of how I felt. It's like they have way more things to think about than meeting me. And I don't know. Izzy was very cool. He brought some really cool Indian cookies from this, Indian, Indian food, India, country
Sure.
India.
Yeah, Indian food,
Right.
sure.
Yeah. He brought these really tasty little cake cookie things, and I'm like, man, these are really good. Where'd you get these? He told me. We started talking about food and shit, and he was way cool. He wasn't, he didn't have an attitude. He was very down to earth, which is probably why he couldn't hang. Because the other guys are all, rock stars and shit.
Then what was Axl like? Then did he have a presence, like with firing people? Did it ever cross your mind that he might not have liked you and asked you off the project? Like he would have had that kind of power with West? Like if there was, like, he still, even though he was a guest on the record, that he had some sort of control over that track?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I played on that track, and big deal. You know what I mean? The song stands alone with or without his voice on it. I told Wes that. He said, dude, just take his fucking voice off of it and put it out anyway. It sounds great.
But I didn't even know, though, that it was Axl on it.
Yeah, he's doing backgrounds on the title track, Anxious Disease.
Right, so I didn't even know until I read about it that Axl was on the record. It didn't stand out to me like that.
Yeah,
That's
and he doesn't like anyone in the studio when he's recording. I never got to meet him.
Oh, okay, that's okay.
He comes in the studio at like 3 a.m. or some ungodly hour like that to do his vocals. God knows why, but that's what he does.
Then tell us about, because I know we talked on a little bit earlier, just the fallout, what happened. Like you had the lead singer, you were dealing with West,
Right.
and just, did you foresee any of this happening?
Hell no. I didn't, not at all. I knew they were going down a bad road, but I didn't know how bad.
Right.
I was the only sober member of the band, and I had never been around junkies or cocaine addicts or both, and so they were really good at hiding it from me, and it just got them. It got them both, George and West. Well, before West died, he found another singer from Canada to do the rest of the record.
Right.
And he wanted to take George's voice off for continuity. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You keep George's voice on there, you fucking asshole. He was awesome, I miss him. I was pissed. I was so pissed at Wes, man. He fired me when I put him in rehab. He fired me. Said, you have no right to put me in rehab and all this shit. And Jamie, who I had brought into the band, sided with West. Said, yeah, you didn't have the right to do that because Wes is the one with the deal, which showed me Jamie's integrity right there. And I was like, wow, what a piece of crap, I'm trying to save the guy's life, and the guy's back in the asshole, right? So he calls me up a month later, all apologetic. I'm clean now. I'm so sorry. I need you back in the band. I didn't really mean to fire you. We're going to go on tour with ZZ Top. I got another singer to do the record and all this shit. I'm like, okay, well, let's just go and do this and rock it, man. I forgive you. I understand you were in your illness, and let's just go rock this shit, you know? And a few days later, I get a phone call. West is dead. Like a month later, I don't even remember the timeline. Yeah, I'm like, oh, what? So it was like 3 years of work down the toilet, and my whole life was dedicated to this project, you know?
Where did you even begin to pick up and just figure out like what the next move would be? I mean, obviously you're dealing with the grieving of your friends within a short amount of time, but you also have your life to think about. And like, when did you even, like, how do you even plan? Like, okay, do I look for another band? I have to make money. Do I get a regular job? Do I move somewhere else? I mean, like, what was your next move?
My next move was, I just started dating this girl, and the day that I put George in rehab, we were supposed to be recording all day and night, and she thought I was in the studio, and I told her what had actually happened. She's like, oh, my God. And I said, I really don't want to go back to our apartment. Do you mind if I stay here tonight? So I ended up staying with her for a few days, went back to the place, had some friends from NA come and clean up the blood and puke and shit that was in the bathroom. And, I felt weird about being there by myself. You know, it was West's pad. I had one bedroom. George was on the couch. George is now dead, and West is in a rehab, and I'm there by myself going, what the fuck, you know? So I moved in with her, and I started working with Rod Jackson. Actually, I started working with Steve Pryor, the guitar player from Oklahoma.
Oh.
Really good blues rock guitar player. He passed away last year, motorcycle wreck, but the guy was excellent. He was kind of like Stevie Ray Vaughan, but more rocked out, if you can imagine that.
I can.
Yeah. But anyway, I thought, well, what do I do now? I said, I'm like, fuck rock and roll. I'm going to go play country, right? Fuck this rock and roll shit. This is way too much for me. It's too heavy, blah, blah, blah. I'll go play with a country band. I got a gig with a country band, and I'm out playing. We're doing 5 sets a night, 5 nights a week at these big, giant dance halls in the middle of, like, Colorado and Texas and shit. And I'm like, people doing all these, line dances and crap. And I asked the bartender, hey, man, where I can get a joint, Oh, that's illegal here. We don't do that here. I'm like, yeah, but you ride around with open whiskey jugs with shotguns in your back of your truck. That's cooler, Come on.
Right?
But they would look at me like I had 3 heads. Hey, man, you have any weed? Oh, we don't do that around here.
The stigma.
Oh, it was unbelievable. And the reason I started smoking again was, after going through all this shit, I was watching the news one day at my friend's studio, and they announced that they had successfully cloned a mammal, Dolly the sheep. Remember that?
I do, yeah.
Okay, when they did that, I had this vision flash in my brain of, like, really twisted shit with about aliens coming down and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, my God, I got to get stoned. Right? So that's, I started smoking weed, and anyway, I don't do any of the shit that those guys did. Those guys were shooting heroin and cocaine, injecting it. I'm like, what the fuck?
No, yeah, you don't die from marijuana or pot.
No.
I mean, just to be around that environment, because that's something, I do talk about in this podcast, addiction and depression. And I said I'm lucky that I'd never really gotten into anything hard, because I feel like I would, because I have an addictive personality, that I could easily fall into that.
Yeah,
if it was around me. So that's why, people like West, I mean, yeah, he was mad at you at the time, and so was Jamie at the time. But you're trying to do the right thing, but to be around people suffering from that and going through this, with dealing with hard drugs, it's
a mess. It's a nightmare.
It's unnecessary stress, and unfortunately, they paid just like the ultimate price. It wasn't just a horrible nuisance. It's terrible.
It's not, I mean, addiction is a scary thing. I've been to rehab a bunch of times when I was a youngster. And I remember, watching a limo pull up, and some guy comes out with 2 garbage bags. He goes, yeah, I can afford a $300,000 a year coke habit, but I can't afford any luggage. I'm like, fuck, you're a mess, dude. You know?
Well, you said something else to me off the air that I can like identify with, and it's something that helps me keep away from some of the more dangerous temptations. But it's therapy, and that's something I talk about. I'm open about going to therapy.
Oh yeah, I wasn't even able to talk about or think about the outpatients for about 5 years until I went to therapy. I was a mess. I was such a mess. Like, I try to just move forward, you know, after going through like all this trauma and shit. You know, I have what do you call it, PTSD from that band, you know.
Do you think, because obviously, you know, you dealt with some of the death of your singer kind of face to face and hands on, which is traumatic enough, aside from the death. But do you ever think about like other bands that deal with a death and like what they have to, you know, how to cope? I think it was for another podcast that I did. It was actually with for Alternative Nation, where I interviewed Dave Laurie, the manager, former manager, of course, because he was for Jeff Buckley. Right. And he said after Jeff had died, I forget if it was the PR person or somebody that was in the management team of Nirvana reached out to him and said, you know, unfortunately, welcome to the club of like, you know, your singer, your face dies. What do you do? Like, where do you go from here? I
don't know. I've been trying to figure that out. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Right. So that's what I'm asking.
About it. I'm writing songs about it. A lot of my songs now are deeply personal and more on the, I don't know, man. I'm just writing music, you know, and trying to finish up this damn record. It's taking me forever. How
long have you been working on it? Is it solo? Is that what the record is now? Or are you looking for?
Just my songs, and I brought in players to play on it. Like brought in Billy Burke on guitar, Al Da Silva on drums. Al played with the River Dogs.
Okay.
With Vivian Campbell and shit. Al was a great drummer, man. I'm so bummed he just decided he couldn't do it full time. But we didn't have a deal, you know. I don't have a deal. I can't pay anybody, so I don't have a band. Because that's how it is. If you want to have a pro band, you got to pay people, man. And it's really hard to get people willing to just play for, you know, shits and giggles, especially at our age.
Then how do we get you the residuals from the Outpatience record? What is the problem there?
What is the problem?
Is it the estate, the Arkeen estate?
It's it's them. It's the lawyers that made shitloads of money off it and didn't pay anyone. It's everybody, man. It's like, I don't know. It's the whole digital world and the fact that you can even find it, you know, is amazing. But it's like, wow. I don't understand the world these days, man. I really don't. I don't get the whole computer thing. I don't have a cell phone. Well, I actually do, but I never use it, and I always forget it. And I don't text or any of that shit. It's like, man, if you want to call me or talk to me, call me. I don't text. I'm not looking at my hands every 10 minutes, you know, like everyone else. I don't. It's weird, man. It's a weird world that we're in now. Very weird. And what I'm blown away is these kids, instead of going or, I mean, Guns N' Roses obviously is going to sell out arenas, but these guys that don't do anything except spin records and, you know, play with filters like DJs and stuff. And there's thousands of people paying shitloads of money to go watch a guy spin records. I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, I don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't either. And I mean, I have younger brothers who will go to some of those shows, and some younger friends. And it's supposed to be, it's like all the work that those DJs do behind the scenes, and with all the production of it. But it's like, all right, I get that. For someone like on a different level, I'll do imaging and, you know, sweepers or whatever for radio stations. But it's like, okay, that there's a creativity and funness that goes into it. But to watch somebody perform that, I don't understand that at all. Yeah. And it's something that we learned because you guys never played a live show, right? That never happened.
No.
So is there any like demos out there? Is there anything that we could possibly uncover from that era that may be out there?
The record's out there.
I mean, other than the record itself, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, I didn't know if there would be,
It's out with
lost.
different covers and shit. It's mind-boggling.
Right, with different. Yeah, every time I Google it, like when it was I was promoting Jamie's episode or yours, like there's always like a different version of the cover. I'm like,
Yeah.
which is the right one?
Right.
But
Well, the original one had this really mean monkey on it.
Okay.
Really mean monkey. That was the original cover. And then I guess when the guys decided to sell it on their own, they changed the cover and took out the lyrics, I think. Have all the lyrics or not, but who knows? It's just really weird. I had to buy them myself off of Amazon and eBay.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna hope to keep bringing attention to the record and the people that played on it, because not everybody, of course, can speak for themselves anymore.
Right.
Is there anything? There's a lot of heaviness that comes with thinking about that time. But what would you say is the best experience from that time of recording that record with the Outpatients? What's like a great memory or
The
something
greatest memory was, or the most interesting one, I think, for me as a musician, was he went to show me a song. It's called Walk On By. And he's playing this progression that sounds like a child playing wrong chords. And I'm going, wow, this sounds really dissonant and weird. Like, you don't know, like, what the fuck is this, right? And so I'm learning the voicings that he's doing. I'm copying them on the keyboard. Oh, okay. I sort of follow. But, man, how do you feel this shit, man? I didn't feel, like, music is all about how it feels for me. And it was really odd. Like, I'm starting to feel it, and then, but I'm like still questioning myself, like, boy, what I'm playing just sounds wrong, And he goes, no, that's perfect. I'm like, if you say so. He goes, wait till you hear the melody. And then when I did hear the melody that goes over it and the guitar part that goes over it, I was like, how the hell did you come up with that? It was really cool, I was like, wow, this guy thinks in a different way than I do about music, and I was like inspired to work with somebody that could give me that kind of, teach me something, because I've been playing since I was 5, and I'm pretty good, I think, or used to be. But I still play a bit, but I'm not as ferocious as I used to be. But
still, your resume speaks for itself.
Yeah, whatever. It's just, I use less notes now. I can say a lot more with less notes, which I think is a sign of musical maturity, I would think.
I think you're right. It's like me trying to get to my point without wasting a minute to get to my point and just getting it out there, just like this sentence right now.
But his musicality, West's musicality, was very, very unique, and that's what I think got GNR's attention. Plus the fact that they were, buying coke and fucking the same strippers that, you know what I mean? They're all doing this. They're all hanging out together in that scene, and they liked his tunes. And next thing you know, Duff calls him up and says, "Hey Wes, you got to get a lawyer." Wes is like, "What? What do I do now?" He goes, "You got to get your publishing." He's like, "What publishing?" He's like, "All the songs you wrote that we're doing." Oh, cool. He didn't even know he was owed money. He just thought it was cool that his friend's band was doing his tunes.
Wow.
And the next thing you know, he's getting quarterly checks. Every few months for like $6 million, $10 million, $12 million, multi-millions from that. From his writing with them. And I was like, geez,
And he wasn't even technically part of the band.
No.
But as much as he wanted to be. Wow. And I guess this leads to, because I don't want to keep you here forever, but this segues into a nice question from Jan from Germany about members of the band and what you do. What do you think about the keyboardists in Guns N' Roses? Because they didn't have one at the beginning, of course, but they've had Dizzy Reed since Use Your Illusion. Teddy Zigzag was a touring member. Chris Pittman, now Melissa Reese. What do you think about? Because you saw them back in their day. What do you think about them having keyboardists, not just one but two?
Honestly, it doesn't. Aside from November Rain, I don't really like their keyboard stuff that they do. I don't know. Everyone's got their taste, you know. I think it's cool, but I also kind of think it's kind of going over the top. You know what I mean? Like, kind of, they don't need it. You know?
No, that's
like
fair.
Pink Floyd, when Pink Floyd tours, they've got 3 backup singers, a sax player, 2 keyboard players, 2 guitar players, because they need it. You know what I mean? To recreate the Pink Floyd experience, you need all these players to play their parts and sing and all that shit.
Right.
For Guns N' Roses to be themselves, they just need the core. They don't need, you know, dancers and background singers and keyboard players. I mean, it's a different animal. You know what I mean?
I do. No, I do know what you mean. Yeah.
Like taking a ferocious tiger and trying to make it a house cat. You know?
Yeah. No, I
see it.
I do know what you mean.
Like a Joe Cocker concert where you've got a sax player, you've got background singers, you got guitar player, you have a whole bunch of people to watch doing extraordinary shit. Same with GNR. They don't really need to add, you know, a bunch of shit to their stuff. You know.
Yeah, it got a lot, especially when they had 3 guitarists and also the 2 keyboardists. I mean, obviously, you know, at the core, like when you saw them, the Appetite 5, they didn't have that, and those songs speak for themselves. I don't know. I'm weird though with all like the new members. I feel like they always have like a good cast, like a TV. Like I like Melissa Reese as a part of the. Like, do I?
Great.
You know, she's talented.
She's wonderful. I haven't really listened to her. I don't really listen to keyboard players except for old timers. That you know, the guys like Errol Garner, Ahmad Jamal, Bill Evans, James Booker. You know what I mean? Like guys that were like just freaking monsters, and youngsters there's still much to learn from the old masters. Beethoven, Brahms, Bach. You know?
Sure.
That's where it all. Well, rock and roll comes out of black spiritual stuff and slavery and shit, and hymns and stuff.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yep. But anyways, it's. I thought Guns N' Roses was a great band. Excellent.
All right. Well, hopefully, you know, if I'm ever in LA, we'll go to a show together, or you can come out here to go. You know, I can get your perspective on everything. But I guess because you're not Mr. Social Media, if people want to keep in touch with you, in contact with you, especially when you know the formation of your record, do you want people to contact you on Facebook or?
Sure. I don't know how I'm going to get this record out though, because I don't have a manager or a lawyer, and I don't know. Like when you put it out through another company, like CD Baby or Amazon or something like that, you can't really audit how many of them they're making or printing. You know what I mean? So like they could say, well, we only sold 10 copies, but they sold 100,000 copies or something like that. So I'm kind of like reluctant to put out anything until I can even get paid on the outpatients. You know what I mean? Like fuck.
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, well, you'll figure out a way. I mean, whether you wanted, you know, do it in if you're putting it up on Spotify, on YouTube, if you want to do a CD Baby thing. I mean, that's not my area of forte because I'm just trying to get this podcast out there, and that in itself is difficult.
It's a mountain to climb, you know.
I know, but I mean, I'm glad you're getting the creativity out there. I mean, obviously, you know, finances and making something back from it is great, but I'm glad, you know, a lot of the bad stuff is behind you, and you're creating again.
Well, absolutely. You cannot step in the same part of the river twice. You know, it's an old Indian saying or something like that. But you know, it's. What else? I'm a musician. That's all I know. So I've tried to do other things. It never works. You know, it just doesn't work.
Well, we're glad that you are. I mean, you made a great record. I know there's a lot of
there's some good playing on it.
Questionable activity that happened around making the record. Some sad stories that happened around the record, but it's still an album that people appreciate all these years later, and I know the listeners appreciate you coming on. And you know,
there's a lot of pain in that record, man.
Yeah, I think a lot more than people knew about it. So I mean, I hope people go back and listen to it, and it gives them a new and deeper perspective and appreciation for not just you, but what West brought.
Oh, he was amazing. He was so uniquely creative. I never met. He was one of probably the most. And I played with a lot of guitar players, man. You know, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I can name names, but it doesn't matter. But Jesus, this guy West had such a unique approach to songwriting and creating melodies that I haven't heard anybody else write like that since. You know.
Well, I want to keep learning about West, and I want to keep this part of the Guns N' Roses story alive because it needs to be. It needs to be. And then the point of it leads us down to a road to talking to you today, which was, this would not have happened in any other universe. So I appreciate, your time. I appreciate
being remembered for something, man. It's kind of cool.
No, of course. And, you're officially, since, I played some sound bites for you before, but I guess if you want to come back on again, you're always welcome because you're officially you're a bad apple. That's what I call people, friends of the show.
Yeah, man. Thank you. How do I find your show? I'm not very good at the computer, I'll be honest with you. So,
I'll
tell me the website to go to. I could go to it.
Yeah, no, I'll make it easy for you specifically. I'll just email you or inbox you a link. But we're up on a few platforms. The iHeart. You said you don't have a cell phone, but if you have, also on your computer, or if you do invest in a cell phone. Just like how back in the day you purposely bought a laptop just to see if you were on the internet with the Japan. But iHeartRadio, you can stream it on. There's the iHeartRadio website or on the app. Same thing with Spreaker. That's like speaker, but with an R, Spreaker in there. SoundCloud is the same thing as a iPhone app, or there's a website to play it off of. iTunes as well. Stitcher is the same thing, so I can send you one or all of those links.
Wow.
The AFD show is on. You can stream it. You can download it.
Very cool.
Yeah, and you can play it on your phone or on your computer. So it's pretty good. So click and play. I don't charge anyone for anything. Hopefully that'll come a point where I can be like a Joe Rogan or Adam Carolla and make some money off it. But it's been very awesome that not just talking to people like you, but all the listener feedback that I get back a lot. The last episode, which didn't even have a quote rock star on it, has well over 1,000 people who have listened to it and downloaded it already. So in a very short amount of time. So that's how you can get it. But that was also me not just explaining it to you, but that's like the creative way of like I'm explaining it to you and my audience at the same time. So it does two birds.
I wish you all the best of luck with it, man. I hope it goes huge.
Thank you. And I get back some great feedback, which I'm sure I'll get back from this episode, where this person's story was so inspiring, or I had no idea about this. So people seem to really appreciate me bringing in and finding the people, like the right kind of people to tell stories.
Yeah,
and
cool.
Thank you so much, Gregg. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was nice talking to you.
Our last interview in the compilation features the young nephew of West Arkeen. Recorded March 2019. His name is KC.
Yeah! I'm kind of honored, and I really appreciate you reaching out, KC, because
Yeah, man. My pleasure. Absolutely.
Did you listen to the episodes with Gregg Buchwalter and Jamie Hunting?
Yeah, absolutely. I was on a trip to New Orleans, and I, for the past 5 years of my life, have just been digging for, anything I haven't heard off the Outpatience album or, GNR material. And I came across those podcasts of yours, and so I gave them a listen and actually reached out to Gregg, and had a brief conversation over Facebook with him. But I have grown up kind of in the shadow of this whole thing my entire life, and I'm just looking for more information wherever I can find it. And anyways, I really appreciate what you do in terms of finding out these details and reasonings why. And I've learned from your podcast stuff that I haven't heard from family members about my uncle's last leg of his life. So yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I know my family does too, for sure.
Well, I'm glad, because those were, doing this Guns N' Roses podcast. It's not like I have a weekly with Axl and Slash calling in. So, to get creative and to understand all the other brilliant minds that have been involved with this band, this organization, whatever you want to refer to GNR as at this point in the game.
For sure.
But I was very grateful.
It's a phenomenon, man.
Sure. Because there was somebody that mentioned on, and I wish I can remember so I can give them proper credit, but on mygnrforum.com suggested getting some people from the Outpatience on to know more about that record, considering that had the very last recording of Axl and Slash on a song together, even though they didn't know it at the time when they were recording it.
For sure. Yeah.
So to have Jamie and Gregg come on, and then to tell, not just talk about the music and their history, but just their relationship with West and the heartbreaking tales of when they found out or when they found him. So that's something else to do with this podcast, because you can't, if you're going to talk seriously about Guns N' Roses, where it's not just like a bullshit conversation, rock and roll, you're going to have to talk about addiction. You're going to have to talk about drugs.
Absolutely.
You're going to have to talk about death.
To all of the fortune and the fame, it's not a surprise. There is that dark side, and my mother, put it in the terms that LA, sucked him up and chewed him up and spit him out. And I'm just like many other people, that didn't make it out of that generation, and that's a reason why it has this, mystique, and this, kind of magic, around it. And beyond that, it's on a personal level, trying to figure out who you are as a young person. You reach out to, your blood family members. And one of he would have been my second blood uncle. My father's brother is still with us, but he would have been my other uncle, and to not have him in the picture and to constantly think in potentials, what would happen with his career? Where would he have been? You know what I mean? My parents, tell me the time that, my mother tells me the time that, we spent with him, when I was a toddler and a young kid. My brother was a young teenager at the time. So, I know for a fact, Wes had a, strong impression on my brother, and he loves him dearly, up, right before his death, West was clean. My mom tells me, he worked very hard to, put his addiction on the back shelf and try to focus on life. And, during that time, my brother got to go spend a few weeks with him. My mom took me as a toddler out to California. She was living in Texas at the time, and, to go pick up my brother and visit with him. And West, I believe at that time, gave my brother a Telecaster, and he was evidently very supportive about, my brother pursuing, his musical talents, and it's just, in his death, he's left behind all of this music for, it seems now, because everything is so, everything I feel is like behind all of this red tape. It seems like it's like the Outpatience album is, it's himself left behind for his family, and he, it's not a very uppity fucking album, man. Like, you listen to the lyrics and the songs, it's some dark shit and it's some heavy shit. And, that was, him. My mom tells me, he was this loving character, hilarious, full of fucking, spunk, and, got involved, in heroin, just like a lot of people at the time. And that completely changed his character, and he was pursuing, music his whole life, so I've heard, other people, say that, they think, heroin is like a catalyst for fucking, good music and, out of the box thought. Like, dude, like, no shit, I jam with a lot of musicians, man, and, a lot of them, are people with basic fucking, addiction, you know what I mean? And they're just in that mode because they feel like, that's rock and roll, man, fucking G.G. Allen, and anybody that thinks that, hasn't been subjected to, having a fucking entity, in your life, that, my mom went on and on about he was the glue that kept, siblings and, parents together, you know what I mean? And it was just like, once that got fucking terminated, it was like, that was the domino, first domino to fall. And it was just like, it seems to me, and all of this I have to say is just my perspective growing up, hearing, listening, seeing, and it didn't dawn, on me that, this perspective is very unique. This position that I'm in is very unique. Who the fuck else can say their uncle was, not just a friend to the fucking band, but a songwriter, and just I can list off the songs to people, dude, and dude, I love to fucking, I'm so proud, of him, being this fucking character, and I tell people all the time about, you like this band, you need to fucking check out the Outpatience, and to me that, that very personal album, it's very definitive of a particular pocket, in time in music. And I dig deep and it's like, you can obviously pick out, the common trends that come to a head, in a period of years, like it was fucking post-grunge, it was post-Nirvana, you know what I mean? Like it was a very unique, pocket of music that could have, like, who fucking knows where that could have gone. Like I listen to that, dude, I hear Alice in Chains, Guns and like I hear fucking everything, and it's, it's very deliberate, it's very deliberately written, it's very detailed, and you can tell, like, because we have demos of those fucking songs, on cassette tapes that we haven't digitalized. My mother actually, her mom, Martha, West's mom, right before she passed away, suddenly in the hospital due to a fucking procedure gone wrong, gave my mom some cassette tapes, like some fucking gallon bags of cassette tapes. And my mom going through them, no shit, like 2 months ago, found some cassettes that West gave his mom. I assume right before he died, because it's the Outpatient stuff.
Wow.
And so, like, my mom she called me at work, and she's like, Casey, you have to listen, and she's holding the phone up to, her speakers at home, and I'm listening to this shit that I've never heard before, that's been sitting in a fucking closet. And, just to hear the bare bones of what these songs became, and to hear it with the original singer, because you have to keep in mind the whole fucking, and I know the whole thing, heroin destroyed the whole band. The whole band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
First day of recording, his lead singer dies, and not just lead singer, but a friend, that he had a rapport with, and it's like,
right.
I couldn't even imagine, you know what I mean? Like, you put in all this work developing music over your life, because, like, dude, it's not like you sit down and write a song. Like, from my perspective, this dude was working on this music his whole life, and to fucking finally find that match and for it to drop out, like,
it's literally losing a love of your life in a way.
Dude, it's mind blowing, like he just picked back up, hunted down a vocalist that fit, and they cut the album, you know what I mean? And it blows me away that, you know, this album isn't heard more. You know, it just like it blew me away that, you know, Greg or one of the two, Jamie, mentioned they were surprised that people are hearing this album. And it's like, dude, like, what the music on this fucking album is so good, and through from beginning to end. You know, it's you know, I'm partial.
It's hard to find.
It's a masterpiece, man. Yeah, dude, I've listened to it countless times over my life. It's the soundtrack to my life, dude. You know, like during his death, my mom went through this period, you know, of, you know, she lost her brother that she was close to. Now you got to keep in mind, you know, there was my mother.
Yeah, how close were they in age?
Like 4 years.
Okay.
Or 2 years. He was born in 60. She was born in 62. So, you know, she was the baby. Wes was the step up. Then there was Abe, and then there was Susan. And so that's the childhood picture, you know, and the parents, Martha and Morris, right? My grandfather, Wes's father, Wes was born in, you know, France, you know what I mean? He was in the military, and they were living in France at the time. And then they moved to Texas, and, you know, lived my grandparents were married for 30 years, and then they got a divorce. And during that 30 years, they had a daughter who I think is like Susan, the eldest. I think she's about 12 years older than the rest of her siblings. Okay. So she is, you know, she's almost like a second mom. You know, she's very, very much older than the rest of the siblings. And then towards the end of their marriage, they had Abe, West, and my mom within, you know, like 8 years or something like that. So these three siblings growing up were very close in age. But the grandparents, West's parents divorced. I'm sure when he was like 3 or 4. And my grandfather Morris moved to San Diego, and you know, and that's a whole other thing. You know, there's a whole other complicated situation. You know, and you know, everything I've heard has come from, you know, my mother, you know, and her perspective of the whole situation. But from what she told me is, her father was like, you can come live with me or you can stay with your mother. It's your choice, you know. But I'm taking my boys. And so he took West and Abe. Susan, you know, was already pursuing schooling, you know, and she was already like on her own path, you know, but he was like, you know, I'm taking my boys and they're living in California. And so my mom stayed in San Antonio with her mom because she, you know, she felt a very, very strong connection to, you know, her mom. It's her mom. Anyways, she, you know, Martha, she fought, you know, for custody for the kids, you know, to an extent, you know, but Morris, you know, was this multi-million-dollar real estate developer. And, you know, my mom just goes on and on about, you know, how brilliant of a man he is, and the few conversations I've had with my Uncle Abe, who I wouldn't even call him an uncle, you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's, there's, you know, I've met him maybe once in my life, you know what I mean? And I've had, you know, a handful of conversations with this guy. And to me, he is the catalyst for, you know, what would be a family, you know, being decimated due to unfortunate circumstances, you know, Wes dying. And that's, you know, one of the reasons why I heard, you know, your podcast, and I thought, you know, for the longest time, like, dude, you know, this fucking story that we've had, you know, and the shit that we've had going on, which, you know, my poor mom, you know, she goes through losing her brother, you know, Wes, and then losing her mom, you know, she wants to put any fucking, you know, anything, you know, like that on the back burner concerning estate or, you know, and dude, anyways, So yeah, Wes lived in California, you know, and would go back and forth, you know, and visit his mom and sister, and then go back to California. And then my sister my mom during summertime would go and visit her, you know, brothers in California. And it was a very back and forth thing, you know, and, you know, from what I know, West, you know, pursued music, you know, his entire life, you know, playing acoustic, you know, but he moved, you know, to Los Angeles, you know, out of his fucking dad's, to pursue music full time, you know, and, you know, he was like 24, I think.
And that's how old you are, right?
I'm 25, yeah.
Okay, 25. So
yeah.
Do you ever put that in perspective? You know, the age that you are now,
oh, yeah.
essentially, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And, yeah, it's crazy, dude. You know what I mean? And my mom, you know, and her friends, and, you know, my brother and West's friends, who were all a part of this tribute page on Facebook, you know. And it's a private group, but, you know, it's all of his friends from the strip days and elsewhere, and ex-girlfriends, and, you know, and they all share, you know, memories, and, you know, like James, Jimbo Estrella, you know, and Del James, you know, they're all a part of this group. And so that was, you know, an open door for me to just like, hey, you know, send a message, be like, hey man, you know, do you have any stories about my uncle, any good man? I was up to hear anything, you know. I'm trying to paint a picture of, you know, who this person was, you know, beyond what I knew.
Sure. I mean, everything you're saying,
yeah.
I really identify with, and I think a lot of people would. I keep thinking I have family issues, you know, with the death of my dad, and seeing in what I believe in because I'm also one of four, just like West was.
Yeah.
You know, for me it's all brothers, and we have, obviously we're close, but like my dad's side of the family blamed my mom for what happened to my dad, but they won't come out and say that, particularly because they feel like it's going to hurt us, the kids, even though it's obvious that's what they think. Oh, then shortly after, you know, just like how your mom lost her brother, and then her mother. So then, like 8 months after my dad goes, his mom, my grandma, goes, and that was just a catalyst because she was the matriarch of that side, and where she went. So I mean, there's a lot of little things. I'm not going to go into, of course, in the same detail that you did.
Scrambling to like pick up, you know, because it's like once, you know, it's just a chain reaction of shit, man. You know, that takes place, you know, and unfortunately, you know, it could have gone one way, you know, and you know, I'm sure there would be, you know, more family contact, you know, but you know, due to, you know, certain person's actions, it went a completely other way. And it's a shame, you know what I mean? And
let's talk about that, because that's something, again, sure, I identify with as well, where I feel, you know, after my dad and even after my grandma, I'm like, all right, because I'm the oldest of all of them. And I think when my dad passed, sure, I mean, 35 now, I was 29, so I wasn't, I know I wasn't 30 yet, but so all my brothers were obviously younger, and it's like, here's a chance for the family to get together and maybe use this, like, if there is a silver lining in an actual loss of a family member, let's find it. And then somehow, whether it's money or feelings that were never talked about, and now they can't be, they're you know, there's like it's going through like an anger. It's going through like an anger funnel now because people don't know how to be sad, like, and truly control their emotions. There's so many variables, and I'm sure everybody listening knows what happens after when someone goes, and the whole entire family's affected. But it's not, again, what's going on with Wes. So I remember having a lot of people were asking this question on my podcast, social media. I saw it on my GNR forum, and I certainly noticed when I would see, you know, "It's So Easy" come up on my Spotify, then all of a sudden go to the next song. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. So, you know, what can you tell us? Because I think that's what Jamie and Gregg kind of alluded to, that there is, you know, some family stuff going on, which is why this album isn't in wider release and why people can't get it. Even on YouTube, sometimes it's not always there.
It's this piece of art, man, that, a human being put his life, into, has been turned to just a funnel for profit. And that's it, and if there's not any, like monumental profit, going into the pocket of the owner of the IP, then, I'm sure it's not considered worth this individual's time. And that's the whole fucking story, dude, is, after West died, his father died, before he passed. And then West passed, in 96, and then about 10 years later, his mother passed. So what that did was that just left this whole, revenue stream to go unseen for years, and just collect. This poor fucking 3-year-old woman, feeble-minded woman, who was the heir to this multi-million-dollar estate, wasn't aware. She knew West had success and they had their problems like any mother and son do. But they loved each other. And my mom, she goes on about how much West adored his mom, despite what other individuals out there claim. Why would you give your mom fucking demo tapes, right before your death? Why would you gift her your music, if you didn't love your mom?
Yeah.
And so, and I'm sure West, because I've heard, from and read other places that, when he was like in his addiction, he was one character, and when he was out, he was another character, and he was this like, soft-hearted, always, funny guy, but I've read that when he was, his, addict self, he would make crazy claims to people and be a prick and, cut people off and fire people, and then apologize and be like, yo, I'm sorry, man, or whatever, but regardless, my whole point is after he died, this account started filling up with Guns N' Roses royalties, Outpatience royalties, miscellaneous shit, Duff McKagan's Believe in Me album, I'm sure, anything that was out there that West was registered to, this revenue was just building up. And the heir, the legal heir to this fucking estate wasn't aware. And like I said, she was, over 80 years old. I had a very personal relationship with my grandmother, and for, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, this Abe, West's brother, he has made some outrageous claims about her, her person and West's relationship with her and, and all of this shit. And, and they have they had a very, rocky fucking relationship themselves. They're children of divorce, and I think that was a lot of pain for West, too, as much as Abe, Susan was already like, she made it out of her adolescence, she was, on her way. But I think the three siblings, West, Abe, and Alice, my mom, I think they all felt, felt like children of divorce, man. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I understand.
They all had their problems. So, that being said, from my discussions with my Uncle Abe, which I reached out to after seeing some legal threat on Facebook made by him to, I couldn't even tell you the name of the person, but they were just trying to they were trying to coordinate and throw a benefit show for like heroin addiction or what. They didn't even choose the benefit yet, but the whole purpose of the thing was to have, a party, in West's honor, to celebrate his life and his music. And it was just, a ball that started rolling on this Facebook feed, and everybody's like, yo, I got the connects for this, and no problem. A date was set, they made a page for it and shit. And then out of nowhere was this, page-long comment by Abe Arkeen, who, decided to go by James, which is his middle name, claiming that if anybody were to use his brother's, intellectual property in any, factor, that they would be, targeted, essentially. And so everybody was like, all right, hands off, you know what I mean?
It just makes it awkward.
Exactly, and the whole fucking, thing, I'm trying to just come out and say it, but the whole thing is Abe pretty much unjustly acquired this estate from a feeble-minded individual, and has been living off of it and just living off of this fucking revenue since his death, since he claimed it in 2005. So the story is, right, he, after not talking to his mother for about, 10 years, probably since around the death of West, he calls my brother and he's like, hey, I'm trying to find your granny. I've been driving around her house. I'm in a rental car, and she hasn't been home all day. All right, that's like first thing. You know what I mean? Like just to look at that. He flew in to Texas unannounced, without calling his mother, rented a car, kind of fucking cased out the joint, trying to find his mom. All the meanwhile, she was parked in her garage. You know what I mean? And she's just an old lady in her house. Anyways, he gets a hold of my brother, and my brother is in the Coast Guard at the time, somewhere in America. And he's like, I honestly have no, here's my situation. I have no idea where she is. So he goes up to the door. This is the story, and it's speculation, and it's from what I've heard. And, the contact between Abe and Alice, my mother, this is how it played out. He went up to the door, knocked on it, claiming in tears. And as soon as my grandmother opened the door, he, was like, will you let me in, please? And she was just taken aback by her son that she hasn't fucking heard from in a decade at her front door in tears. Mm-hmm. He comes in, claims he has ball cancer and all this and that, and it's like out of left field shit. And my grandmother calls my mother after this whole situation plays out. And the whole purpose of him there was he drew up some legal papers, right, presenting them to Martha, the heir of the estate, claiming, this is giving me the right to probate West's estate. Abe claimed that West owed 6 figures in back taxes and all of this, shit. And presented this legal document to my grandmother at her house without legal representation. And it was about, what, from her perspective and what she told my mom, it was about probating the estate. And so the story goes, he's like, all right, let's go get them lunch. And so they go to a local restaurant, he claims as of a month ago that he took her to a bank, and it was in front of a person, where she signed this paper. Regardless, she wasn't aware of the legal document. She had no fucking explanation.
She's I get it. I mean, because she's older. I mean, you're taking it.
Exactly. And she understood Guns N' Roses, but the legal side, the actual inner workings of the business and how he gets paid, she was an 80-year-old woman living off of welfare. And a year before she passed, suddenly she got a reverse mortgage on her house.
Yeah, those are things. Again, it's weird and it's scary because a couple things going through my mind. Because I guess some people you don't like me being a brother who not just like a brother, but like I have brothers, and thinking what would my mindset be if I lost one of them. Is it a case of being just insanely protective, or is it a case of where I have another uncle of mine, I haven't spoken too much, who had a major drug habit? I mean, now he's just kind of elderly, and it's just communication would just be futile at this point. But another uncle just like that, or is it? Or does he have like there's so many things that are going through my mind, and you just don't want it to be, because when it's family and when it's affecting, like, he's not like an only child. He has your mom, when it's affecting siblings, what's going on, and what do you what was his relationship, I guess, with your mom? Because that just makes it weird, because you said how the boys were split up from the girls. So he might have does he not think that your sister, I mean your mother, deserves it because he views his?
No. I mean he I mean, I'm sure he thinks that, but is that actual? No, absolutely not. And what if that's the reasoning? What the fuck entitles this character to this $1 million fortune, multi-million dollar fucking fortune? This gentleman, and he ain't a gentleman. I'm sorry. That's my politeness coming out.
I understand, and you're handling yourself well, because this is extremely frustrating, and it's not about.
Nothing, and dude, it's been people just dancing in circles, man, since 2005. As soon as he got this document signed, he left on good terms, and then sent a letter to my grandmother saying, I own West's intellectual property, any revenue, this long legal document, with blue, in a blue envelope and shit. And,
but to do that, like with your grandma, how, since you're being, open and honest, so that's why I want to be, because I know there are other people who have, again, as similar a situation as you can, because not everybody's uncle wrote It's So Easy. But, after, my dad had passed, apparently a week later, my grandma changes her will to take me and my brothers out of it. Because it would have been, because all that was in there, okay, she had 3 children of her own. If she goes, it goes to their children, her children, my aunt, my uncle, and my dad. And if one of them goes, it goes to the grandchildren. But that wasn't even in there. But this time it was changed to include the grandchildren. So it was an obvious thing when it wasn't a lot of money, where it was just a way to get back at my mom, thinking that she was involved, with what happened with my dad. So, but what I'm getting the sense from you, which is how I felt, and it's a major difference in money. For me, it was just, thousands of dollars, but it was not, multi-million dollar. But you could tell that it's about the music. It's about just wanting to be a part of the family. It's not about the money. It's not about the money.
Dude,
and money fucks so many things up. It makes people do bad.
Dude, and the person that may be living on the fucking high horse, with this income, dude, does not have the perspective or appreciation for art, that comes when you don't have that. because, you know, even though West's father was this multi-million-dollar, you know, entity, you know, who took care of him, you know, my mom tells me, you know, he would fucking put money in his account and make sure he was all right, you know, when he was a young teenager, you know, and buy him a car, you know, and that was the whole thing, you know what I mean? Like, West was this, you know, creative genius, you know what I mean, with this, like, aura, you know what I mean? And then Abe, on the other hand, was this very, like, mathematical, you know, for lack of a better word, dork, you know? You got the fucking rock star and you got the fucking dork, you know? And what kind of animosity, but, you know, like, I have a brother that's 10 years older than me, you know, who's also West's nephew. You know, he's Aaron, the dude who spent, you know, the week with him before his death. You know, and I know, you know, brothers fight, dude, you know, and I'm sure there was animosity between the two of them. My mom recalls West leading up, like, right before his death, being like, dude, Abe is a fucking freak, you know, and now this quote-unquote from fucking West, fucking freak, is living off of his fucking art, man. He's hiding out in fucking Abu Dhabi with his very successful daughter, who has, you know, and she's reached out purely on the same level that I'm at, you know, a family interest, you know. She's like, who is my cousin, you know, and I'm in the same boat, you know.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You know, she's got a master's, you know, and she's got a successful business, you know, and she lives in Abu Dhabi, you know, but now her father, you know, who I'm sure she's had a strenuous relationship with, you know. By the way, you know, this individual, Abe, who's living off the, you know, he was committed like 5 years ago for having a fucking nervous breakdown, freaking out, you know, and I'm sitting in, like, you know, my room or something, and I'm thinking, you know, yeah, it's probably because you fucked your dead brother and now dead mother, you know, out of their fucking, you know, like, what was rightfully theirs, you know. And so this guy is, like, living his life being like, this is rightfully mine, you know, when in actuality this guy was a substitute teacher that I'm sure has never seen a motherfucking day of hard work in his life, you know what I mean? And now he's just living, making these bullshit documentaries, aliens versus hippies, and like trash, dude, like fucking, like, it's your delusional mind on screen. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's just like a peek into this, like, dude, like, for real, like, I like I said, I've had a handful of conversations with him after I heard your podcast, you know, with Jamie and Greg. And after I saw that legal thread online, I took a fucking snapshot of it, and I was like, dude, I'm going to call this guy. You know, this is as much, you know, shit, and, you know, I just wanted to learn for myself about the situation from the source.
Right.
You know, my mom was one source. She's credible, but she's my mom, you know, and I wanted to be neutral. I wanted to talk to this individual that could have been my uncle. You know, if you fucking tried, we could have had a relationship, you know, but he didn't, because he's a piece of shit, dude. Like, he's like the lowest form of human, you know, and that's just like, that's from me to him, you know. There you go.
I mean, for one, I appreciate you sharing your story, and I know it's also West's, but your story as well. I mean, this is hard to talk about, you know, and the reason why I'm sharing this snippets of me is to let you know and others know that I know what it feels like when family does this, and it's really frustrating. And you kind of, you know, you hope, you know, I could say to you, and it's what I think to myself: one day they're going to change. One day things are going to, you know, work out, you know, for the best. And you know, we're gonna look back, and we're gonna, you know, all have
this is a giant lesson, man.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
We're all gonna have like a big good cry and hug each other. But I mean, I know that's not reality, and they're
hell no.
No, it's frustrating. And a couple, you know, one thought came to mind. Have you ever? Well, a couple things, because I know we're not going to keep you here forever.
For sure.
One thing, have you ever thought about what if Axl said something? You know, someone, you know, you look at like those old pictures and videos of Axl and West, and you see the love between them, the friendship between them, and you wonder, and it's like I've said before, I mean, I don't know Axl from Adam and anything, so I think, you know, I've said before, I would love for Axl to talk about mental health, because I think he would have the great platform for it. But for him, if he just said something about what's going on with this estate, you know, I was wondering, I mean, I don't know if that's naive for me to think that he could even change anything, but I wonder if it bothers him. I wonder if this bothers Axl. You know, I got to imagine he still thinks about West.
So, yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, I know there were a lot of co-songwriters, you know what I mean, that were on all of those albums. You know, Buckethead is credited. You know, Del James is credited. Like, you know, it's countless. You know, the individuals who had, you know, their foot in the circle. You know, but this particular one was, you know, first hit off of the first like major album that like Appetite for Destruction, dude, not like, it's not GNR Live, you know what I'm saying? Like it's the one.
No,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not like the you know, the Fine Young Cannibals greatest hits. It's a fucking Guns N' Roses first debut album.
Exactly.
I get it.
Exactly. So you know, I could only imagine what a stunt, you know, that was creatively in everybody's process, because, you know, like, to have one mind throwing ideas out there, you have to keep in mind West, as soon as he went there, man, as soon as he went to LA, he went to a school for music. He went to the same fucking school that John Frusciante went to, and countless others, you know what I mean? And so he was, you know, he was fundamentally and technically sound. And I'm sure, you know, like, I'm sure he was able to share that with these other musicians that had, you know, that were on their own journey, you know what I mean, interested in music, you know, but may not have had that opportunity. You know, because like you go to the Outpatience album, you know, and the tunings, you know, change, you know, 4 or 5 times, you know, throughout the whole album, you know, and like you look at, it's just like, it's very, like I said, deliberate and technical, man. You know, I saw, I can't remember where I read it, but I remember reading that in the scene, you know, he was selling, you know, like Crash Diet, for instance, you know, and there is a Guns N' Roses demo, you know, and that's West's song first and foremost, you know what I mean? And if it didn't make it onto the Guns N' Roses album at one point, you know, or even if it didn't come out with Axl, you know, singing it as a demo, I'm sure it would have been, you know, under the Outpatience umbrella. You know, it was on the same, you know, cassette with Outpatient songs, Crash Diet, you know, like, you know, all of the skeletons, you know, it's the It's So Easy skeleton, like, you know, like,
and fans want that, especially since the band really hasn't released new music.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
We appreciate it.
I'm a fucking fan too, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, I'm not able to find my uncle's music.
More importantly, though, West would want us to have it. This isn't a matter of copyright.
That's what I'm saying, man. You know, like,
right.
that is what I'm saying. You know, West working his fucking life for this product, which is badass. He would want it out there, man. You know, like, and he was working his way to it. You know what I mean? And you know, and he was successful, man. You know, addiction was one thing. He beat it a few times. And circumstances played out, you know, and here we are.
So what?
Yeah, dude.
What? I mean, because you're 25. You're talking about an uncle who died when you were really young. You know, often I think about relatives that died when I was young, and just wishing that I knew them. You know, at that point, and then they asking questions and looking back at old photos and trying to find out how maybe this person has affected the person you are today. And you're right. So we all do that, and to go through it, you know what I often talk about with the other aspects of being in a band, just to go through this shit publicly is just, it adds everything on. We all know the stresses of family stuff, but they go through it again publicly, and then, you know, we all have money issues, but then they have multi-million-dollar money issues. It's just so stressful because you are just, I mean, I'm not going to say it. Maybe I say because I have a brother your age, but you're just a kid, you know?
Yeah, dude, absolutely. You know, I just came into fucking consciousness a few years ago, you know, to like, what the fuck, you know, what is going on really? You know what I mean?
So what are you, what are you doing like now? I mean, I know you're just a regular dude. You reached out to me wanting to talk about your uncle, and I appreciate it. You're always welcome back on if there's somebody else, you know, in the family that wants to talk about West.
Absolutely, man.
And it doesn't always have to be, you know, somber. We all know, unfortunately, what happened, but it could be cool stories, fun tidbits, whatever you want to do. You know, consider me an outlet for you. I have no problem with that. But
that's cool, man.
But what do you like? What are you doing? What is, you know, what's going on for KC?
Well, I'm a chef and musician in Denver. I just moved up to Denver last summer.
Cool.
So I'm checking out the music scene and the food scene here. Just kind of met a few cool people up here, started writing with them, and, you know, just trying to get the ball rolling up here. You know, Wes, like I said, you know, he's influenced my brother. You know, he's left an impression on everybody, you know what I mean? And, you know, my brother just had his first kid, and he's actually named after him. His middle name is West, so Hudson West Arkeen is the new addition to the family, you know. Nice. And it's cool. I'm a first-time uncle, you know, and so that's a whole other thing, you know. It's like now I am to him, you know, what this fucking person, you know, could have been, you know, to me, and I look forward to being that, you know, that person to this individual.
Life, man.
So yeah, man, exactly. Just living life to the fullest. Just, yeah, like, I appreciate you, you know, welcoming me on, man. You know, like I said, I'm a fan of, you know, what you're doing, you know, and, you know, I've just learned so much, you know, from listening to your show. And so it's personal, you know, to me, just on my own journey to collect information and figure out, you know, the story, really. So yeah, man, I really appreciate it. It's totally fucking cool.
No, this was very cool, and I know it's hard to talk about, you know, even though you were eager to talk about it, but there's a lot of emotions that come up, and I can get a sense for, you know, your confusion, your anger, your curiosity, your love. I can sense the whole range of emotions that I know. Like, I know, but I don't know, that kind of phrasing. So it's frustrating. I hope in one way or another something works out, because I know Jamie and Gregg, they both want to share not just their contributions,
and they deserve, you know,
they deserve it,
you know, for fucking the work that they put into this fucking piece of art, you know, an acknowledgement, you know what I mean? And so that's a damn shame that they haven't fucking heard anything, you know. And, you know, and from, you know, I'm sure it's a wall of the illegal action they have to go against, but, you know, who knows what'll happen. I hope something good happens, though.
Me too, but
everybody, yeah.
Why did, you know, the Outpatience thing is one, unfortunately, just one side of it, but why were the GNR songs taking off? Like, why? So is that like a direct order from your quote unquote uncle that said, I don't want these streamed anymore? Like, what's?
Dude, it's pure speculation from my point.
Okay.
But I would assume it just has to do with him fucking, like, not being in the conversation. Like I said, this character, from what I've learned and heard, is, you know, detached, man, and it's a shame that he is calling the shots for this estate, you know. So I really couldn't tell you, but if I had to guess, it would be because he's just not in the loop, and or the money's not quite worth it. You know what I mean? Because, like, dude,
if I was GNR, I would say something. So they must be like, he's be like, oh, this is Guns N' Roses money. I want this percentage, and like, no, dude, or something like that. Then why would GNR?
Dude, they could be in fucking discussions right now, man. About like, I don't know how much percentage they want, or like. At the root of it, I'm sure it's all about money. Guns N' Roses, dude, like, you go on, like, one of their YouTube videos, that has, like, the November Rain, YouTube videos, fucking, like, 1 billion, something fucking views. Well, you scroll down, and it's like, music rights to 24 different music societies, and it starts listing all of these people, that are like, hey, dude, I deserve, and it's like, I think the focus on the art is long gone, and I think that I'm happy. I heard they might be putting out some new shit, and it's like, dude, that is fucking awesome, But in the back of my mind, I'm like, nobody really knows where West's master tapes fucking went. That's another thing, dude. Is like. After he died, his house was raided by like fucking, junkies. Oh, I'm West's friend. Oh, I'm West's friend. Oh, I'm West. And it's like they just were like, oh, I want a piece. I want a piece. I want a piece. And before they knew it, dude, it was like, where is all of this shit? I know Susan, came and claimed all these guitars and shit, and we have a platinum for Appetite for Destruction and an old guitar of his, but it's. Like, where is his music? Like, I'm finding these cassette tapes, but like, where's the bulk of the shit? Wow. And so that puts the question in my mind, is somebody out there, who knows where West's music is now? You know what I mean? Like, who knows what is West's music?
That's something.
Where
else.
It is, what guitar riff is, like who, like really, dude? Somebody knows, but
well, I know you're going to keep after it, man. I mean, you're a young guy. I mean, I'm only fucking 35, personal, so but I guess he would be proud of you. I mean, obviously, I did not know him, but your intentions sound nothing but pure, and you seem to have a really good head on your shoulders, and that you were raised right. That West had a good sister. Or has a good sister, however you want to phrase it.
Yeah, dude, and despite what you might read or hear from other sources, dude, West and my mom were fucking as tight as you could get, man. And, my mom just loves her brother, and that's all I can say, man. They just, if she loves him the amount that she does, and I've only heard, what she told me, then I know he fucking loved her with all of his heart, and would have done anything for her or his, nephew Aaron. He was always fucking like, my mom tells me he was always like on top of the ball of like new shit being released. Like, oh, dude, the Sega Genesis? Yeah, I got that a week before it fucking was released. You know what I'm saying? Nice. And, like, I couldn't, like, if I were a kid and I was 13 years old and, dude, my fucking rock star, Mr. Rock and Roll fucking leather pants West is like, dude, I just couldn't even imagine, man, but it's cool, to me that I have this character, with this kind of like, it's just, dude, it's crazy, dude. Like,
yeah, I can't imagine.
It shows you how small the world like really is. You know what I mean? When it's like, when that's the scenario, man. And he was loved by countless people. You know what I mean? And he's still being loved by, people after his death. You know what I mean? And
clearly.
Yeah, man, like everybody on that tribute page is fucking, they all love this guy. And, that's pretty much it, man.
Well, I appreciate you again sharing everything from your story, telling us more about West, because I think we want to know more, not just from hearing some great music that's hidden, but just some stories that can really lead, that we all can relate to and use in our lives. So I guess I appreciate everything you're doing, and I appreciate your time. And again, you're always welcome back on to talk about whatever you want to talk about, because there's plenty more about West's story that we don't know yet.
Yeah, for sure, man. Just let me know.
And there you have it. You could hear from Gregg, James, or Casey on future episodes of Appetite for Distortion. So please follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Also up on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you got to enjoy some photos of West, including those given to me from Casey himself. For updates on future compilations, on future interviews pertaining to West Arkeen, also follow on social media, facebook.com/The AFD Show, Twitter @The AFD Show, Instagram, Appetite for Distortion. So who will be the next interview on Appetite for Distortion? When will you experience the next compilation? In the words of AXLrose concerning Chinese democracy, you'll see it. I don't know if soon is the word.
Thanks to the landmass security, I'm going home.